6:00 p.m. I'm going to call the council to order. Please rise for the invocation and pledge of allegiance. Please bow your heads. Dear Lord, we come before you to ask for wisdom and guidance as we come together for this council meeting tonight. We ask that you help us find a way forward that is in line with your will and gives glory to your name. Help us to be open to all ideas, no matter how small or insignificant they may seem. In your name we pray. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And now the Texas flag. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible. Y'all may be seated. All right, I want to welcome everyone to our meeting tonight. It is December 5, 2024, our first meeting of this month of December. I just have a couple of announcements. We had a great Christmas market on December 1st. I hope everybody got to come. The planning committee met last night for a final review to talk about how things went, and discussions are already underway for our next year's event to make it even better. All in all, we received lots of good feedback from vendors and shoppers that were there. So again, I would like to thank Kit and Robert and Jessica Bradbury for all their hard work and all the local talent that performed. We had the DJ, Jerry Harris, Joe Ray, Wonderland Dance Academy, Dorla's piano students, the Marshallese Choir and Dance Group, and Nevaeh Wilson, who sang "O Holy Night" during our tree lighting ceremony. Plus, Town Hall Estates sponsored our refreshments afterwards. So it all came together very nicely, and everyone did a great job. So I just want to make sure they all get their recognition. So second announcement, Allsup's is open, and I think everybody knows that. Has everybody been to Allsup's? I think we've all made a stop there to pick up something. All right, so they opened December 5. Was it December 5? December 4. So if you haven't already stopped by, please do and try to support our new local business. Yes, there is a market in this store, and they do have fresh fruit and vegetables. It's a limited display, of course, but it's a step in the right direction. The owners and staff are very friendly. The store is clean. I heard the bathrooms were clean. I didn't get to use one, but I heard that. And the store just looks very clean and inviting. So I'm just really excited that they're here. So that's all the announcements I have for tonight. Council, do you have any announcements you would like to make? Anything else? Okay, moving on. Agenda item number 3, public comments. I have Paul Knott that would like to talk to us about the Christmas parade.
Okay, Paul Knott, 37-year resident of Keene, all within inside the city limits. Currently, the last 25 years, the 107 North Old Mansfield Road, and Mayor, it was a great city market, so it was very good. Everyone can be proud.
We're still learning. There's still more that we can do to make it even better, but it's a step in the right direction. I think this year's was better than last year's.
Exactly, and after 2 years, it's off to a great start.
Exactly.
Yes. I'm here to talk about the parade this Sunday, December 8th, and I know the weather is iffy. What we're going to do is right now, all the forecasts that I've been watching on the television news has the rain moving out about 2 or 3 o'clock. So we're going to hope that that happens. If not, we just have to play it by ear. Certainly the Keene High School band cannot have their new uniforms get wet. They can't have their instruments get wet. And it's be very difficult to load the fireworks and to discharge the fireworks. So we're going to wait as late as possible, probably even up until 5 o'clock to see what the weather's doing on the radar and if we have to call it. And then if we do have to cancel it, it'll be the following Sunday. Be the 15th. So there you go. But a lot of plans have been made for this Sunday. We've had more advanced phone calls than we've ever had. So right now I'm looking for a good participation. But I would like the council to talk about if you'd like to be together on a float. I know we have a float for the mayor. That's an individual float, along with our Grand Marshal, Clem Hobbs, our parade marshal, Nathy Regmond. And then the mayor, we have Jonathan, because he's new to the city, so he's on a float by himself, but we'd certainly like the council on a float too. But I need to know that tonight so we can find the transportation for you. Otherwise, we're looking forward to, if you're there as a unit or not, looking forward to seeing you Sunday night. And be sure and stay for the fireworks. Okay.
Council,
All right.
do you want to give him
Thank
a
you.
show of hands if you want to be in a council float and let Mr. Knott know?
I won't be here.
You will? You will?
I will not.
You will not be here, okay. Troy?
I'm already volunteering, so I can be there.
Okay, but, okay. Mr. Easley, would you be in a float? Okay. Mr. Putwa, you'd be in a float? Mr. Chapman, Mr. Shaw? Would you want to ride in the council float?
Can you put that motorcycle up on the float?
He needs to know if he needs to get the vehicle. You're going to be riding the motorcycle, so.
We had about 150.
Really? Wow,
Johnson County's store run,
wow.
and about 3/4 of them said they'd be here for this Sunday.
Okay,
Be up there.
okay, cool. I think it's a yes. Go ahead and, I say go ahead and plan it if we don't get rained out.
Well, we'll be there, rain or shine.
Yeah. Okay, that's all the cards that I have for anybody that asked to speak during public comments. Is there anybody here that did not fill out a yellow card that would like to speak during public comments? Oh, okay. All right, we're going to go ahead and move on then. Agenda item number 4, reports. A, city manager's comments. Mr. Seitz?
Just to give you all kind of an update on projects that we're working on. And again, the Christmas market was a lot of fun. It was great to see the community get to know. And honestly, a lot of the people that came weren't even residents here. So it's a great opportunity to promote our wonderful town. So that was great. Just to give you kind of an update on the real property project, I will have all information in, deadline from different people I've been meeting with next Wednesday. So I would ask for next Thursday, Friday to kind of compile everything. I would also invite you to schedule meetings maybe before the 19th council. Would love to meet with you individually to go over the actual findings. Also, the Kittle project will also be scheduled for the 19th, so we can go over any of those questions and things ahead of time just to try to kind of streamline the city council meeting. And then the lawyer research, Mr. Brown has been very helpful with that, giving me some guidance, some recommendations. I will also have that done next week so that as you come in and meet with me, if you want, I can give you all this information kind of at one time so that you guys can come prepared to the 19th council meeting.
Okay. All right, any questions for Mr. Seitz? All right, thank you, Mr. Seitz. All right, agenda item number 4B, receive and discuss a report on the outdoor warning system.
Unfortunately, we are going to have to table that.
Okay.
Chief Warner called me and he was not sounding good and he went home not feeling well. So we'll move that to the 19th.
Okay, let's go ahead and move that to the 19th. All right, agenda item number 5, public hearings. We do not have any public hearings scheduled for tonight. So agenda item number 6, consent agenda. We have 5 items for, under the consent agenda for approval. I would like to remove item number 6E for just a brief discussion. Does council have any other items under the consent that they would like to remove?
Do we need to make a motion on that? So,
Yes, we need to make a motion on A through D.
Oh, A through D?
Uh-huh.
I'll make a motion to approve A through D on the consent agenda.
Second.
All right, we have a motion on the floor to approve the consent agenda items A through D by Smith and a second by Easley. All in favor, raise your hand. It's unanimous, motion is carried. All right, agenda item number 6E, I asked for this one to be removed. I just wanted to briefly cover this only because we have new council members present that were not here for the original discussion about the donation bins. This is consider approval of ordinance number 2024-676, adding chapter 117 donation bins to the Code of Ordinances of the City of Keene. So council, new council members, I just want you to be aware that the discussion that took place was we have some clothing donation bins around town, an abundance of them. Mr. Knott brought this to our attention, and we've discussed this a couple of times. And the consensus at the last meeting, but it was with the previous council, the members that now are no longer with us, that we ban all donations. So that will mean is if we pass this tonight, I just want you to be understood that we're going to have to tell all those blue bins, everybody that owns those at the barbecue place and everywhere around town, that they're going to have to remove them. And I did speak with Pastor Gibson about the new location, the Keene Community Impact Center, and I just wanted to tell you that he's okay with this, and this is not going to impact him, so that was good news to me, because he said he was only going to accept donations during business hours, and he would be happy to put signage up to show that. Yes, Mr. Easley?
It is unmanned bins.
Yes, it's
Yeah, so
unmanned
let's
bin,
make that
so
clear.
they have to drop them off when there is an attendant there present to receive them.
Right.
And they've changed the hours of the impact center, so they do have extended hours now, Monday through Thursday, and then also on Sunday for 4 hours. But I kind of know that we've had in the past, where at their previous location, people did just drop stuff off, and there was no attendant there. But he's okay with us passing this if we would like to, as is. It won't impact him. It'll just impact all the other blue bins in town. So I just want to make sure everybody's okay that that's the step they want to take. The other option was to change this to where we permit them, and we can restrict how many we have and how they're handled and what can get dropped off there and cite them if they don't follow the rules. But that's the other thing. But we bypassed that with the previous council.
Okay, Mayor, I'm also supporting that. If possible, if the council sees this as an option, instead of banning them, I know Keene is not as big as maybe Dallas, Cleveland, and these other major cities. If you have, and this is from my experience, we normally do donate some of our items we normally drive it to Cleveland. But most of the time, around 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, they're closed. And there's a big sign, they don't allow any donation after certain hours. But you'll be surprised seeing people dropping some items there because it's a donation center. So, and it's hard for that facility to take somebody to court that is donating something that they can use to help somebody else. So I don't know if it is possible to use the permitting, regulating them, where you know who is responsible for these bins, because that's the problem right now. You don't know whether to go to the property owner or maybe track down somebody who installed that whatever bin at a certain location. So by regulating them, you can say we can only allow one along Hollow Betsy, or we don't want anything along Hollow Betsy. You have to go maybe to the other side of town, maybe College, something like that, or 67, something like close to that. So I don't know how the council will look at it, but I think regulating might make more sense than banning all of them.
I'd like to speak to that. By banning the unmanned boxes, which are the remote boxes that nobody attends, if they do take it to the impact center or the disaster depot, those operations are manned daily except for Saturday. So anything left after 5 o'clock would be picked up the next morning at those locations that are manned. These are the remote boxes that nobody attends except maybe monthly. So that really isn't a point, because if they take it to the impact center on 4th Street and they leave it after 5 o'clock and nobody's there, the next morning when somebody comes into work, they're going to pick that item up and take it inside. Problem solved.
And okay, go ahead.
The other aspect of what you're asking is you're asking our city employees to do way more work. That is going to be very time consuming to try to track down that person, to try to force them to pay a fine, to make them pick up the trash that doesn't go in the bin, because that's the problem that we've been getting is the clothing fits in those little box, right? It's all the other junk that they set next to it that's the eyesore. That's what causes that to just look really bad as you drive down, right? So it's not what they're putting in the bin, it's what they're putting next to the bin that doesn't fit, and then it sits there for weeks because nobody's coming to collect it. And then in reference to what you're asking, you know, now we're got to find a city employee that's going to man those, or make sure that they're in compliance all the time. And I just don't see that as a viable option. I think it's just easier to get rid of all of them, so then that way the city doesn't have to worry about it. That make sense?
That's to me.
Mr.
Can I ask, okay.
Yeah,
Anybody wants
he didn't raise his hand. How do you guys feel? Because you haven't been on this discussion before. How do you feel about the bins in town?
I think just get rid of them. Excuse me. I just say get rid of them.
Okay.
No need to manage it.
We've got two places here that help the city out, the impact center and the disaster area.
Okay.
I think we just need to move them out or pick one location and put everything there. If that's what they want to keep them in the town. Put them in one location. If not, just get rid of them.
By using one location, though, we still have the same problem, don't we? People just leave stuff on the sides, and
Yeah.
you know, and when I first came here, I saw it over by this dollar store on the other side. There was junk everywhere, and I thought, why? Why would we allow that? So that's just me.
Okay. Sounds like we probably have, yes, sir.
I agree with the council. I'd like to get a clarification on section 4, though. Excuse me, I've got a bit of a issue tonight. It talks about being fined. It says not less than $1, not more than $2,000, and each day any violation continues, blah, blah, blah. Can we narrow that? I mean, it could be up to $2,000 a day, the way I read that, or it could be $1 a day. And then, well, hey, it's $1 a day, I'm making that more than that selling this stuff at the flea market. So I'd like to narrow those parameters a little bit if we could. Maybe you could. Mr.
Well, that's just for Class C misdemeanors that have, most misdemeanors are like 1 to 500. They can be 1 to 2,000 if it's things like littering and stuff like that. So that will be up to, if someone gets a ticket, that will be up to the municipal court judge. I mean, they'll either set a window fine that says this is a standard fine for this deal, or on a case-by-case basis, they'll come up. So, you know, it'll be up to the judge to decide whether I'm going to fine somebody $1 or $2,000. And it's unlikely. I mean, usually in these kind of things, they'll bring them in. And it could be that, you know, code enforcement may write, you know, warnings first. I mean, it's like anything else. You're trying to
Be nice.
educate people and progressively being along. But if you have someone that continues to just blatantly violate it after numerous warnings, then it will be appropriate for the municipal court to, you know, lay down a heavier fine.
All right, council, you want to go ahead and make a motion then?
I make a motion that we approve ordinance number 2024-676, adding chapter 117, donation bins to the city of ordinance, code of ordinance for the city of Keene.
Second.
All right, we have a motion on the floor to approve ordinance number 2024-676, adding chapter 117, donation bins to the code of ordinances of the city of Keene by Easley, and a second by Smith. All in favor, raise your hand. It's unanimous, motion is carried. I just want to say thank you, council, for that very intelligent and very calm discussion. I thought you guys handled yourselves very well. I like the fact that we're sharing ideas and then coming to a decision. I think that's really good for our city. Okay, agenda item number 7A, review, discuss, and consider the selection of a candidate on the Johnson County Appraisal District Board of Directors ballot. Okay, so, council, we already know about this. We've done this a few times, but to new members, what we do is we have an allocation of votes that we are given every year. It's based on, I believe, our population. And Keene has 43 votes to then use to select a CAD member. So in order for a member to get on the Johnson County CAD board, they have to have a total, I believe, of 834 votes. And so all these votes from all the different city entities and the ISD entities all get added up together, and the people that achieve that number then are getting a seat on that board. So in recent years, we have been trying as a community to try to get people on that board that are regular citizens that can help represent us, the taxpayer, and be able to create a fair and very transparent system. So we may cast this vote for one candidate or more than one candidate, and we can divide them up. And we have been given a list here, and you have a list in front of you with all these different names. And I will tell you that some of these members on here have already achieved the number of votes that they need. So therefore, we can kind of cross them off the list. We won't need to consider them tonight. So from my understanding, James Cockrell is already going to be on the board. He's received his 834 votes, so you can remove his name from the list. Amy Lingo has also received her 834 votes, so she's already on the board, so we don't want to give any votes to her. It would just waste them. And also Dwayne Golding has gotten his votes. So those three now can be crossed off of the list. And the members that we've heard from in the past that would and get back on is John Wood and Brandon Potts. And we've got a couple of citizens here to speak to us tonight to talk to us about how we should allocate our votes to these individuals. So I'm going to start with Craig Hunley.
Mayor, council, so we're coming to the tail end of the CAD board election. All votes have to be turned in by December the 15th. I think Monday night is our last big night, but our two citizens that we have left is Brandon Potts and John Woods. John Woods is over halfway there. We should get him over the top Monday night, and maybe Brandon Potts, but you can either give I would like for you to give all the votes either John Woods or Brandon Potts, or split them. It's your choice.
Okay.
That's what I would like.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Hunley. All right, Greg Cooper.
Can I ask a question?
Sure. To Mr. Hunley?
right.
Yes, sir.
You said these are good citizens. What's their lot in life?
What's their
what do they
lot
bring to the
like?
table
Okay,
here?
John Woods, he's already an incumbent on the CAD board, PhD. We were the first county in the state of Texas to take over a central appraisal district, and we're the ones that brought out the election process that nobody ever knew about. So we have set an example for the rest of the state. This is an election process through the taxing entities. We have another bill in place right now. Helen's got in place. We're going to try to get the rest of these candidates elected through the voting public.
All right, next I'm going to call Greg Cooper. Thank you, Mr. Cooper, for coming.
Yes, ma'am. Mayor, council, thank you, new council members. And for those not here, thank you for your service previously to Keene. This is a unique opportunity, and more to the questions you answered. This is a very odd election, and it's the only one that's like it. We, the individual people that are represented, we don't get to actually elect these individuals. You guys are elected to represent the totality of the tax base, the totality of the citizenship, and then you guys allocate these votes. Keene's already done a vote of no confidence that everybody currently that was on the council then voted for. That vote of no, this is an extension of that. That vote of no confidence was for the old way that the CAD was being run. And the current CAD has already made major steps and accomplishments. The chief appraiser has recently resigned, and the Central Appraisal District Board of Directors has initiated a request for proposal process to bring in an independent set of eyes to look at the processes, methods, and procedures of the Central Appraisal District to make sure the citizens of all of Johnson County, which Keene's a part of, to make sure that the appraisals are fair, uniform, consistent, and by law. The council members that were here before are well aware of the data I provided that showed that there was quite a bit of problems with that. So basically, 3 candidates that are on your list, Cesar Diaz, Bruce Gibson, and Lauren Pate, were nominated by one taxing entity and one taxing entity alone. That was Godly ISD, who is the worst financial ISD in Johnson County and carries the most debt in Johnson County. They were nominated at the bequest of the superintendent, and his own school board did not vote for those did not vote for those nominations. So this is a pretty easy vote. It's an agenda item. If you have any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer any of them.
Any questions, Mr. Cooper?
So if the superintendent nominated them, but no one voted for them,
Yeah.
that still gets them on the list?
So if you go back a few months, there was a nomination process where all the taxing entities nominate candidates. Then it goes back, there's a list compiled, that's the list you see now. That list is compiled of candidates. Then now you're in the voting process. So it's kind of like you guys all chose to fill out a request to be on a ballot. The taxing entities nominated. So, does that make sense? Answer your question? Any others? Yes, sir.
Was it just the school board superintendent that did the nomination? Was it him alone or her alone?
So the superintendent said, we will nominate Lauren Pate, Bruce Gibson, and Cesar Diaz, and the school board nominated those individuals. Then you go into the process, but then you're learning about the candidates. Once the school board learned about the candidates, they voted not to give them their votes.
So the school
They gave
board,
all the votes to Jim Cockrell, yes, sir.
the school board accepted the nominations, but then when it came to vote, they went somewhere else.
Well, if you want to get technical about it, technically, and the lawyer can answer this, the school superintendent is an employee of the district, and he used district resources to tell the elected officials how to advocate for a vote. That's electioneering. That's a whole nother issue. We won't get into that. It's your guys' decision. It's not,
Yeah.
you don't use resources to push that, fair to say? So, so that's a whole nother ball of wax. But, the nomination process, they did take his advice on the nomination, and then during the casting of ballots, his recommendation in an open meeting was to allocate 100% of the votes to Cesar Diaz. They chose to allocate 100% of the votes to Jim Cockrell, who's already secured enough votes.
I got a question for you.
Yes, sir?
Sorry, did you have a follow-up? Okay. So I want to talk about the people that already have enough votes. So we got Amy Lingo. Is she already on the board?
She is.
Okay. Goulding on the board?
Yes, sir, he's the chairman. He's the one that has come here a lot. He's done,
I think I remember seeing him. How about Cockrell? He's on the board already?
he is not on the board.
Okay.
They added more position, Vance Castles and Toby Ford resigned, so that's why there was more, that's why there's so many positions this time.
But
So you
there's
have to
nine-
put.
There's 9 now, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
So Toby Ford, Vance Castles resigned. You have to fill those at the next election, but he's already secured enough votes, sir.
Okay. Okay, and then what you're asking for tonight is either John Woods or Brandon Potts.
Yes, John Woods is currently the vice chairman, and Brandon Potts has an extensive history in real estate appraisals, financing, selling of real estate, et cetera.
Okay.
So,
That's
yes, sir?
And how close are John Wood again and Brandon Potts?
John Woods is a couple hundred away. Brandon Potts is quite a ways away. The school districts have the most votes. Burleson ISD has well over 700 votes to cast. They'll do that next Monday. Mansfield ISD has, I think, 260 some, and the city of Mansfield has quite a bit still, so. Yes, sir?
All right, yes, Mr. Seitz?
Not that it really matters, but I actually know Brandon Potts personally. He used to be a client of mine during, back in the National Direct Media days with his father, and it's an upstanding family.
Okay, thank you, that's good to know.
I've got one quick one.
Yes, sir?
These 3 other candidates, do they have any votes at all?
Yes, they do. So some of the school districts split their votes to some of the ones that we're advocating for, and some of the ones that the superintendent, Rich Deere, admitted in an open meeting. School board trustee Kayla Lane asked in an open meeting, Superintendent Deere, have you advocated to other superintendents for these candidates that have never come before us and spoken, and he didn't deny that, so. Keene ISD chose not to allocate their votes. They chose not to allocate their votes.
To vote no one?
They did not allocate their votes, correct.
Thank you.
Yes, sir?
Why would they do that?
Probably because it's a very contentious thing. They have a very long-standing superintendent telling their school board to do one thing, and they have the citizens of doing others. And they probably are torn and didn't want to make a decision, but I cannot answer that question. I can only speculate, and that's what I'm doing.
All right, so Mr. Cooper, tonight, would you like us to see us split these votes between Potts and Wood, or do you think we should give them all to Potts because he has the lesser amount?
So the key, the goal is to have the complete, like, as much consistency on the board. And when I say consistency, I'm not bringing into the fact that their resumes and qualifications, they're very well balanced. You have 30-year lifelong educators on there, you have CEOs of multi-million-dollar corporations, and you have people in the real estate industry. But the consistency is the direction they're taking it, which is for transparency, saving money, and doing fair and equitable appraisals. John Woods is the closest, not knowing what Burleson, Mansfield, and Mansfield City is going to do. Giving all of the votes to John Woods helps get him over the hump. Splitting them gets both of them a little bit closer, but John Woods is much closer than Brandon Potts. So what does that mean by that? Depending on how the other taxing entities allocate their votes, it would depend on what's the best way to go. And that's the weird thing about this type of election. And here again, there's legislation proposed to take this out of your all's hands, to not have to go through this rigmarole. But it's, like, for example, if Burleson ISD equals their votes across all of the nominees, even though some are already there, if they do that, Mansfield does that, and City of Mansfield does that, it can completely disrupt this. If you want to be as laser-like effective to having Keene the biggest voice, I would allocate all votes to John Woods. If you want to do what the majority of people are wanting, you've never even probably heard of Cesar Diaz, Bruce Gibson, unless you've followed state politics many years ago when he was a Democrat representative in the Texas State House. And then Lauren Pate is a resident of Godley who's very supportive of the ISD and was asked to be on it. But if you want to force project Keene's voice, I would give them all to John. If you want to be balanced in who you allocate, then I would split them between the two.
Okay.
Mayor, do we have any more speakers on this topic?
No.
Okay. I'd like to go ahead and make a motion to give all of the votes to John Woods.
Second?
Is that Foster that seconded it? Yeah. Okay. All right, we have a motion on the floor to adopt resolution number 2024-463, casting votes for the following candidates for the Johnson County Appraisal District Board of Directors. And the candidate's name is John Wood, and 43 votes. That motion has been made by Smith and second by Foster. Any discussion on this motion? All in favor, raise your hand. Those opposed? Or, I'm sorry, did you say, you raised your hand for?
Yes.
Okay, I didn't see your hand. Okay, motion is carried. It's unanimous. Thank you, gentlemen.
Mayor?
Yes, sir.
Check everybody.
Sure, go ahead.
I'll go back to work and we can get out of here now.
Go ahead.
Thank you for coming.
Thanks for coming. Thanks, Kane. Thanks for coming. Thank you. All right, thank you, council. I think that was a good decision to make. I think we made a good decision. I hope all the members that, when you want to get on that board with the other entity votes all coming together. Okay, moving on to agenda item number 7B. Review, discuss, and give direction to staff regarding conducting national background checks on new city employees and incoming elected officials. Okay, just to review this item briefly, we discussed this, and this was an item that was tabled by the previous council. So this was done before y'all swearing in. And we were discussing whether or not we wanted to implement a process for conducting national background checks on all new city employees, which most of that's already being done anyways, but it was to add in incoming elected officials. And I believe the reason to do that was to check to make sure that all elected officials are qualified to serve, was our purpose in that discussion, is we just want to make sure that they didn't have any felonies. Under our charter, it basically says that if you are a registered voter, that qualifies you to serve. And if you have usually a voter status, it means that you don't have that felony. And so we've never background checked anybody. We just make the assumption that if you're a registered voter, Texas hasn't found anything that says that you're not deemed fit to vote, therefore you're deemed fit to serve. And so we've never connected any kind of an official check. We did just make a recent charter change, and the new charter change says that you can forfeit your office if you receive a misdemeanor of moral turpitude. And that's one of the new offenses that we just added to the charter. But this offense has to be committed while you're in office. And to forfeit your office, if you're already registered to vote and deemed fit to serve and run, then you have to commit a felony after you've been in office or a misdemeanor of moral turpitude in order to get removed from office. So that's where this would really come into play. So this is basically, do we want to start a process where we're going to start doing regular checks on ourselves to make sure that nobody has acquired a felony while we're in office or a misdemeanor while we're in office that would prohibit us from serving in order to remove us or forfeit our position? And that's really kind of what we're looking at. So it's going to go back to cost and time. It's going to be something staff is going to have to monitor. We're going to have to hire a company to conduct the national check on ourselves to make sure that we haven't acquired one of these forfeiting offenses. And so really that's what the discussion is going to be about tonight, because anybody like to speak to this?
How
Mr.
much does
Frost?
it cost?
I'm sorry?
How much does it cost?
I don't know if we ever got any exact figures on it. Okay, Holly does? Okay.
Sorry, just as an example, because we did run one for him,
Okay.
for Jonathan, it cost $18 and some cents, and that was everything for pre-employment, but it also included the national background check.
Okay.
And
So
I
it's
say do it.
not too expensive then, but we would have to have some policy that we would probably want to put forward to figure out how often are we going to do this? We have all 2-year terms that we serve. If we're trying to do this to see if we have forfeited the office, are we going to run it every 90 days, 6 months?
Oh, I think with Facebook, we'll pretty well know if somebody lives in Keene commits a felony or a misdemeanor of
Exactly.
moral turpitude. Come on, Mayor.
Or do we need it in all? Well, that was brought up before, and I mentioned to Mr. Easley that if somebody does get a felony or something outside of the state, maybe it doesn't show up in Texas, nobody would know about it, it wouldn't be on Facebook. So just depends if you want to mess with this or not. To me, it's just going to be a little bit of an extra step and nuisance that we're going to have our staff monitor and do, and then check, and do we really police ourselves in this way, or just kind of let Facebook, like you say, take its course. If it comes out, we'll address it then, and if it doesn't come out, we don't need to go digging for it in anybody's record and put it on Facebook.
I will tell you, my experience with cities, that what Anna is doing is highly unusual. I don't know of any other city that imposes upon itself a requirement to check for criminal records for people who are running for office or that have actually, taken office. I'm not saying you can't do it. It's just it's not a standard practice that I've seen in the cities that I've worked with.
I wonder if they were having some issue and that's why they put it on there, or if they were having some kind of trouble getting people to apply. And yes, sir, Mr. Easley.
I think the answer to your question would be we run the background check, much as we did Mr. Scythe, when they apply for the candidacy, or they get the candidacy. We don't do it every 6 months. We do it every 2 years.
Just the verbiage says for incoming elected officials.
Correct, yeah,
Yeah.
it's incoming. Yeah, so,
So we'd have to wait until they actually got elected and sworn in, not just candidates, because they wouldn't necessarily win. So we'd
Right.
be running it, we could have an election.
we'd have 3 a year, except for the mayor year, then we'd have 4. So it'd be 3, 4, 3, 4. And say $20 a pop, we're not even looking at $100.
But you would be running these, like you say, if you did it on incoming before they've ever gotten sworn in.
No. It's incoming. Incoming means you've won the ballot. Then,
Okay.
just like we,
And for
we,
what-
we all voted for Mr. Scythe to be our city manager
Yeah.
pending background check.
Okay, so what would be the purpose of doing that then? It wouldn't help you with the forfeiture of office to determine that.
They would be no longer valid for office, and they'd have to
It
go
would
to
just be to make
second-
sure you didn't lie on your application.
Pretty much.
And that Texas didn't miss something when they gave you your registered voter
Yep.
status.
Yep.
That would be basically all it is just a little check system,
Verification, yep.
a verification, make sure they didn't miss something.
Okay.
Okay,
Mayor,
Well,
anybody wants?
go ahead.
Okay, Mayor, this one, I can agree with the attorney that the city of Hana might have this ordinance, written somewhere on their server. We can pull it and print. But we have to know that we are governed by the state law, most of what we do as cities. And I know it's there. I've read it somewhere. The state law requires that you have to commit that offense in office, and most of the time it's always public. Somebody's going to catch it somewhere because these are public records. But you can't punish somebody for a felony that they committed maybe 6 or 3 months or 2 weeks before they get into the office. And the district courts are going to challenge that because most of those cases have failed in Texas.
Point of order. If you refer to section 4.05 of the Keene City Charter, number 8 says, each member of the city council, including the mayor, shall meet the following qualifications. And then number 8 says, and not been finally convicted of a felony from which the person has not been pardoned or otherwise released from the resulting disability. Whether it happened yesterday or 30 years ago, if it's a felony, you are disqualified from office.
Yes, but I'm just saying it's not in line with the state law. And maybe during charter review, we did not look at that, precisely to see what verbiage, how we were supposed to align by the state law.
Attorney?
The state law requires you can only punish an elected official. There are some cities here, I can just find some information and share.
You would be disqualified from even getting the office.
Yeah, I mean, the state law basically lists the qualifications to run for office. You can't run for office if you've got a felony conviction unless you've been released from that disability. So, if you don't have a felony and you run and then you're elected, then if you commit a felony while you're in office, then that could serve as a grounds for removal. But
Yes.
it's not, it's not a question, you're not punishing somebody who's in office for something they did before they were in office. You're basically disqualifying them from running for the office because of the felony. And if it turns out that, that they had a felony, you didn't catch it and they're in office, then you could say, well, they really weren't eligible to run to begin with because they had the felony. My experience for the most part, the identification, because it's pretty simple to find out if somebody has a felony conviction, you just need their name and some basic information. Usually in contested races, if somebody has it, the other candidate has found that information. Usually in situations, they're bringing it to the city secretary saying, hey, look, somebody's got a felony here. You needed to, don't put them on the ballot. And they call me and we say, okay, we got to look at it. And we're not typically allowed to do investigations, but if there's readily available public information that establishes whether somebody's eligible to run for office. They have to, live in the city, for example, and be a certain age and not have felony convictions. So, that's the usual course. This obviously puts an additional level of investigation on the city staff, which I think you can do, but I'll just tell you that it's somewhat unusual in the government practice. It might be very typical in private practice, but in government practice, it's a little unusual.
Mr. Johnson, would you like to speak? Any objection, counsel, to Mr. Johnson speaking, because he didn't fill out a yellow card?
Well, I just got here. Ray Johnson, 1009 Christine Street, Cleveland, Texas, 76031. They're all right. If you got a felony, you can't run. But if you get expunged, you can run. So I didn't hear any of that. And the council people, the only one that did what he had to do to people because they were losing, and they knew they were gonna lose. So saddest part is council let that happen, and didn't have a lawyer to come in here on a Sunday to give them paperwork, and we paid for it as taxpayers. You know, it's pretty sad when we do that. So city needs to do what they're doing right now, figure out what they need to do about it, and go with it.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Is it possible, Mr. Brown, then, to somebody to have if we had a background check run and it showed a felony, is it possible to still find out later that it got expunged and they shouldn't have it on their records, to have somebody like question it? So would we have to then do a further investigation that could cost the city more time or money? Would they?
You can be released from the disability related to a felony. A judge can do it, it can get expunged. That's why this particular ordinance has protections in there that somebody can, this ordinance has protections in there that allows somebody that if there's a determination that they've had a felony and they're notified, then they basically, it's notice and appeal and a hearing, and they can bring that information forward and say, yes, this record shows this, but this record didn't pick up this expungement, or I've been released from the effects of disability by a court order.
So who's the burden of proof on? Would it be on the city? What if the city secretary disqualifies someone saying, hey, they do have a felony, we just ran their check and they just ran for office, but they didn't really have it. Maybe it had been expunged and it just hadn't been cleared off whatever record from company that we used that ran it. But then by the time they figure that out and get that information to us, you know, the election's over and they lost. Could they sue the city because we kicked them off from being a candidate and they weren't able to win and run?
Anybody can sue anybody, so, you know, can they sue the city? I mean, typically, there'd be, you know, a process. I mean, you know, they could file a lawsuit to force themselves to be put on the ballot. But as far as the burden of proof, I don't think the ordinance talks about it, but it does say ultimately it'd be up to the council to determine whether or not the information is sufficient, whether you think somebody is, had the felony or not. And the problem is, of course, this kind of an ordinance puts the council ultimately as the decision-making body as to who gets to run for office or not, which could be misused, you know, in some places based on the politics involved or whatever. So, you know, you know, it could be fraught with peril a little bit, although you're talking about public record and stuff, and it gets the city attorney involved. But yeah, I mean, I think this clearly puts extra burden on your staff, but I can't say that it's not something within your power to do.
So the burden would be on which staff? Would it be on the human resource director to run it, and it'd be on the city secretary to then go back and disqualify them, correct?
Well, it's the city secretary and consultant with the city attorney, but, I mean, that could be delegated, you know, I mean, basically, she could have somebody else do it or whatever, but ultimately, the city secretary is responsible for elections. I mean, that's the way it is in every city. And so the buck stops with the city secretary. Whether the city secretary physically has to do these things or have somebody else just depends on the resources and the availability in this city. If you're not too big, it's probably going to fall on Holly.
Yeah, I have concerns with making Ms. Russell in charge of this task of having to suddenly tell someone they've been disqualified because we found something on their record and put her in the hot seat, because we like Ms. Russell and we want her to keep working for the city. You're putting a big burden on her because people are going to get mad at her. Suddenly it's going to put her in a bad light. And I don't want to put her in the hot seat where she's going to be hated on, or in a political situation where she finds out later she made a mistake. She disqualified somebody that really was able to run, and then they didn't get to run and they didn't get to serve. And then that's going to just, like I said, create more drama, as he said, for the city.
Mayor?
Yes, Mr. Johnson, do you have something else you want to add?
But what you was talking about, being a sponge, you get a copy of all that.
Okay.
So that's no guarantee.
I know it takes time, because if you find out you have it and then.
4 to 6 weeks. And
Okay.
I'm the one they picked on. James Bell started all of it.
Yeah.
And not one council agreed with it, but he did. And he's not no longer here, but that's the way it is. But, you know, it'll be a sponge, and that's how they do it now. I don't think it goes off your record. They'll send you some information about it, and then it's taken care of.
No.
Mine will be taken care of in about 2 weeks. Let everybody know.
I'd like to say something.
Okay.
So it appears to me the state of Texas does have its rules, the way it's written, and then we're trying to alter that, even though on the application, it asks us to be honest and trustworthy with our answer to the application. So why would we decide to take this police action, basically, over something that the state of Texas has already kind of gone over, thought through? I just think it's an invasion of privacy. I really do. And by the way, the people of Keene, they seem to find those things and make it public anyway.
Yeah.
I know for a fact.
Yes, Ms. Gillen?
Samantha Gillen, 218 West 4th Street, Keene, Texas. I agree with you, Bob. I'm a broker, real estate broker, and I manage a lot of properties. We run a credit, criminal, and skip lease check. It's nationwide. It costs about $50 to run all three of those. My assistant does it on anybody that applies for a job, or for a rental. If they come up with a criminal record on there, there's certain ones that we can approve and certain ones we cannot. For instance, if they smoked marijuana, if they had a little burglary back when they were a teenager or something like that, it doesn't apply. Pedophiles, we can't. Someone that's beat someone up, we can't, those kinds of things. But it's a matter of just running it. You can get your own system, you can run it, the personnel person can run it. If there's something comes up, what I do is I always call those people and I say, is this you? This is what the credit report says, is this you? And I'll tell them why we can't rent to them. I mean, I'm just very, very upfront with them. But you can see on there, and then if there's any doubt, the system will normally tell you we're pulling a criminal record, and it won't give it to you right away. If they don't have one, it'll come back right away. But if it's a criminal record, it will pull it up, and it will give you the city, the state, the codes, and everything on it. $18 to $50 to do that on someone. But if they're applying for you and they put it on their application, they should be required to put it on there if they have a felony. And if they don't and it comes up, then I'd want to know why they lied about it. But that's just...
Do those, just actually, those reports, do they typically show misdemeanors at all?
Yes, they do.
Okay.
Yes, they do. And those normally don't apply. It normally specifies what kind it is. At least the system that I use, it does. And so, again, if even on the credit, sometimes people have a horrible, they'll come in and they'll say, well, I have perfect credit. But when the credit comes back and it's really bad, I'll call them and I'll say, is this you? Because there's so many names that are similar. And sometimes the systems do make mistakes. And if they do that, I'll rerun it.
Right.
So, I mean, it's really not that technically involved. It's really not that time-consuming. But it's just something that you need to be aware of, that there's certain things you may need to talk to the person about before you deny them.
Does it show like Class C misdemeanors? I mean, like speeding tickets?
No, it doesn't. Well, it does if they don't pay it, or if they don't go and pay their fine, and,
Yeah.
that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But if they just...
One of the things this thing talked about, misdemeanor conviction involving moral turpitude. Well, you can have a Class C misdemeanor involving moral turpitude if you have a simple assault between a man and a woman, or a man and a child.
Yeah.
I think a lot of those don't get picked up in these criminal background, because they're usually looking at the county courts and the district courts, and so I'm not sure how complete it would be, but maybe they do pick up those.
The ones that I've seen that kind of surprised me, honestly, was a couple where it came back that the woman was charged with a misdemeanor for leaving a child in a car, or something similar to that.
Yeah.
Or wasn't sexual offense or anything like that, but offense against a child.
Yeah.
Maybe possibly spanking them in public to where it was they considered abuse rather than just a little tap or something. That'll be on there. But then, it just depends on what it is.
Yeah, Class A's, Class B misdemeanors, those are in the county level, but the Class C's,
Yeah.
I'd be surprised if a lot of those
Yeah.
get picked up on there.
We don't see anything on there unless there's a bunch of DWIs.
Yeah.
That'll come up. But other than that, we don't see anything else. But I just thought, it's not that complicated if they needed to do it.
I appreciate that's helpful. Thank you.
On the city side of this, it's saying new city employees too of doing this, so we're not doing national ones on them, we're just doing statewide background checks? Do you have any knowledge of that? Is that why we're adding that in there?
Prior, I believe they were just doing the TxDOT, which would be a state, and so,
Yeah, because usually we only do the national on like department heads or somebody like a city manager that's going to have control of the finances of the city. That's something where we kind of look a little bit more in depth than we do for just a regular public works employee. We're not looking for national.
right, so we use a company that does the national, it's like a package, it runs everything.
Yeah. So that would be a change to that policy too, then we'd have to change if we're going to do that on employees. Did you want to say something else?
Yeah.
One more time, and then we need
Yeah,
to
that's
go
fine.
move on now.
What I was gonna say, what she was saying is pretty much correct, but if you do, you know, the people, whoever, like me, I did my own background check. I paid a lawyer in Ohio. Ever since I've been a kid, from day one, being a kid, I don't care what it is, 15, 16, 17, it shows what you've been charged for. So that's guaranteed. If you get somebody to do it right, not just how they want to look it up, not knowing what everything is, so it's true, but you got to do it right. I mean, half of the stuff bunch of jokes on me, but I got paperwork to show everything in the
Okay.
mail. But you have to get it, whatever state, you know, but it showed everything I've been in. So
Okay,
that's how you do it. If you want to get it right, you get it from, and it'll tell you from day one.
okay. Thank you, Mr. Johnson.
Real
Mr.
quick,
Sides?
I think ultimately council just needs to decide what they want to do, and the city side will figure out how to make it happen.
Okay,
Okay, Mayor,
all right.
Oh, good, good.
okay. You know, some of these decisions, they might seem very simple. If you have never involved with the law enforcement or you don't have anything in your record, might look very nice to put on paper. But we don't normally look at the size of the city. We have like maybe in 5, 6, 7 years, we might be around 10,000, 9,000 population. But when you had these little things we are having, there's a runoff that somebody has to run and then run again, even though it's not a discussion. But look at how this is going to impact the people who might want to serve as council members. Here you have to give up your social security as an elected official, and I hope the city will be able to make it confidential, the way they do the employees, and the city secretaries who are managing that. But here is the problem. When you run a background check on somebody, for example, when the new council comes in, we normally have maybe three seats normally run at one time because it's a 2-year kind of cycle. And then you have the mayor and the 3 council members running. So you have to run maybe probably 4 people, that's 18, on the higher side, $50 on the national kind of background check. So while you are running that, maybe something comes up for a new candidate that's coming in. Now, maybe 2 candidates, maybe you are dealing with 3 candidates that have kind of trying to dispute. Now, you have to involve the city attorney who has to go to the district court to make sure that you can work with the counties to resolve the issue. Now, you're having a council, almost a half of the council, trying to justify that the record is wrong, and the city is saying our record is right because of the agency that you're running background check. And you might take how many, maybe 3 to 4 months. The court systems normally tends to move slow. You might end up with 1 year, somebody trying to run for the office that they were elected to run, while here the case is pending, whatever is going on. So you're going to just create a lot of unnecessary kind of situation for both the officials who have been elected to serve, and then within 1 year or maybe 2 years, they are running again for the office if they get cleared. So it's, the side effects is more than what you're trying to solve. I mean, you look at it, it grinds the whole system down. Then it turns into politics. Thank you.
Mayor? Sorry, I know this is a long topic, and I'll try to be brief. I got this packet Monday, and of course, this was a huge topic for me because I'm deliberating how I want to interpret how this needs to be handled. And it got brought up that we do the department heads, and of course that we did Mr. Seitz before he came on board. And of course, I remember we did one on Bernie and we did one on our last city manager, Mr. Batla. So what I'm thinking is I'm like, well, do we do them on everybody? Because what if people move up in this city and they become a department head? Now we're gonna decide to background check them, when we've already given them the keys to the city, for that department. So I'm almost in favor of saying, let's background check every employee nationally, so then that way we avoid that step, so then that way when they do become a department head, kind of like Derek. Derek wasn't a department head, and then he became one when he moved up. Or Dinah, our finance gal. And I know that might be a different story because maybe finances run differently, but if she moves up, now we need to background check her for that. We should have already done it, kind of thing. So when it comes to us, I look at us, this council right here, as the CEOs of what we do for this city. Every CEO, including Mr. Seitz, our city manager, should have a background check done. It's almost a requirement in every entity that happens. So if you are an elected official, kind of like Mr. Easley was saying, once you become an elected official, get the background check and just make sure that everything is on the up and up. I don't think $20 or $50 a person is too much to ask to say, are we making sure that this person is the person they say they're being? It's all it is. I just gave Mrs. Hawley my Social Security information tonight because I had to give her a W-9. What's the difference? She already has it. So I think it's kind of a moot point. I think it's something, even though Mr. Brown is saying that it's unheard of, it sounds like to me that when we sit up here and we're making decisions for the public, let's give them all the transparency that we can. So I say we move forward with it.
And just so we're clear, this item is about new city employees and incoming, so are we all exempt right now? Because we're already here.
Yep.
We're no
Well,
longer
yes.
incoming, we've already come in.
Yeah.
So it would be for anybody
So it would
that's
be-
hired after this date. If you
Correct.
guys wanted to move forward, it's not gonna be now for us, because we're already here, until we run again.
Exactly.
So we run again for the next election. Okay, so at this point, we're just going to give consensus or direction to staff, and I can just do a show of hands and who would like to have them move forward with this process, and then I can ask for a show of hands where you don't, or we can make a motion,
Can I just ask one
so
more
that I
question?
can see if I have a consensus. Yes, sir?
I'd like to ask Holly, what is the cost for a state-run check versus the national?
I'm sorry, what did you say?
Yes, but so I've never been part of when they've done the background checks of just the state level. The company that we use, it's less than, if we don't do the package that includes national, it's less than the $18. I apologize, I don't have that amount.
Okay, Mayor,
Yes, sir.
this is the last time I'm speaking on this. Instead of giving the staff direction to do something or go and look for something, the question I have, why did we choose Ellen? Is there any city in Johnson County, and how unique are we that just a small city of 6,000 people, we want to do a background check, while these other cities around are not doing that? Do we have any city around in Johnson County that does this kind of?
Not that I'm aware of.
No, if it's unusual, then no, we're doing something out of the ordinary. Is that gonna make us look good or look bad?
I bet everybody follows this before too much longer.
Say that again? I missed that.
I think everyone may be doing this before too much longer.
I think we need to set a precedence, and I think the CEO precedence, kind of stands on its own merit there.
Yeah, I'm concerned with the privileged information here, that when these things do get run, as we have discussed, they get out there. And so once it's been run and there's a file here, if she has to now present it to us, if we're an elected official and we have to go into executive session and we have to discuss that we're kicking somebody off council because we just got their background and it just came in after they've been sworn in and they're now elected, and we're gonna say, oh, we just found out he has a felony, that's gonna get out. And if it gets out, even if we don't release the report, let's say we don't violate state law and release any confidential information, all we have to do is accidentally slip it to someone else, and then they get on truthfinder.com, or they get on their own website, they look it up, and they post it on Facebook, and we shame people in our small little community here that we want to be family-oriented and
Mayor?
business-friendly.
We've all been
If someone
shamed.
is going to stand in front of a notary and raise their right hand and say, I have not committed a felony, yet they have, then do we want them serving and representing the people of this city?
Absolutely.
Yeah, that doesn't make any sense.
I gotta say, it's not for us to judge whether a person
We've-
can be a good person and have a felony on their record. They can make a mistake and still be able to make decisions for the city.
On them, they cannot.
I know, but state law basically has
Well-
already made that decision for us, saying, you know.
Exactly, that's what I'm
so,
saying,
I
it's
mean,
already done it, we don't need the check to
And the
double
way
check
Anna's
it.
done it, they actually have modified the application to run. It says, my suspicion is that if people know that there's a criminal background check going to be done by the city, if they run for office, they know they have one, they're probably not likely to run for office. Those people, they'll just, move on and not
They
run
won't
for
do it in the
office.
first
Unless they say, well, I have a conviction, but I've got an expunction, and they have it already, and they're saying, I'm applying, but I want you guys to know, you run they can get ahead of it, get ahead of the curve a little bit, so. And as far as employees and stuff, you can do it as a policy. Usually, most of that's done kind of at the HR level, to decide. Most places, when they make an offer of employment, it's like, okay, you got to pass a drug test, you got to pass a criminal background check. Some jobs you got to pass a physical, depending on what you're doing. So, if we want to try to, I don't know what our HR rules say on that, but most cities, regardless of who you are, if you you apply for the employment, you get a conditional offer of employment, but the things that the boxes that are checked is you've got to, pass a drug screen, you got to pass a criminal background check. So I suspect we do that for all employees, right? Yeah. So really, this is really something we're just talking about, people running for office. This is the only thing. And we could probably simplify this ordinance to make it much
Cleaner.
less complicated. And if the marching orders from the council is, we like the concept, I'd like an opportunity to take the ordinance and maybe create something that's less burdensome, less cumbersome, less complicated, that accomplishes the basic goals of what you want to do, if that's the direction the majority of the council wants to go.
Mayor, I'm a little offended by
Go ahead, Mr. Easley.
the shaming, we're gonna shame these people. We've all, every one of us, I believe up here, have been shamed on Facebook, yourself to the worst, for no good reason. If you've just committed a felony and you get shamed, I think you got good reason. Like Mr. Foster said, you already raised your right hand and swore on a Bible into the state of Texas that you can do this, and then you can't. So, but the Facebook shaming is gonna happen irregardless. And honestly, I'd love it all to stop. I've been horribly done, and you've been horribly done. It's ridiculous.
All right, so this would have to go to an ordinance, is that correct? So we'd be giving direction to staff to draw up an ordinance that would then come back for another vote on this topic?
Right, the HR component for the employees, you don't need anything, that's just something that's standard practice. But, generally speaking, it would probably be inappropriate for the city secretary or the staff on their own volition to say, okay, I'm gonna run a criminal background check on the people who are running for office. This basically says you have to do that. So, it would need to be an ordinance of some sort to
okay.
give them both the authority to do it and quite frankly, the political cover that
Okay.
they're
So
not
we just wanna know-
picking and choosing, they're doing what they've been told to do.
Okay. So what I need to find out from this council is, do we have a consensus and a majority that says, let's move forward with directing staff to create an ordinance that we're going to start running national background checks on incoming elected officials?
And employees.
And
Well, it's already on employees.
Employees already.
National?
No, currently it's just Texas DPS, which is a $3 charge, I found out. The only time we've done national since I've been here was when we ran it on Mr. Seitz and our new HR director.
But I don't think you need an ordinance for that. That's just, you know, administratively how you're managing the department. If the council gives a direction to the manager and says, no, we want, you know, the full national background check on everybody, even though it costs more. I mean, I don't think you need, that's not the kind of thing I think you need to put in the ordinance. That's something that's more of an HR policy that I'm not sure that needs to be memorialized, as long as the minutes reflect that the staff knows to do that. I think this ordinance, if we choose to do it, ought to be really just related to people running for office and the checks that we do before they run into office. And if we find something, how do we process that?
So you would recommend running for office, not after they're sworn in, actually when they apply, when they fill out their application?
Well, I mean, I guess the question is, if the thought is somebody didn't have a felony, ran for office, committed a felony while in office, in a community like this, I mean, I said, I'd be stunned, I mean, how that could not be known. But then the question is, if you decide you're gonna do routine checks on people, how often are you gonna do it? Are you gonna do it on the 1-year anniversary of their election, or every 6 months? I mean, it seems to me making sure people are eligible to run is certainly a laudable governmental goal. The thought that somebody would get some kind of a, you know, criminal violation while he's in office and we don't know about it, and we could do that, but we would need more specificity as to how often you want to run something like that.
Mr. Brown? Is it legal to have that candidate who wants to run for office pay for that?
No, I don't think you do. I mean, the election code, basically, you can't charge a fee for somebody to run for office.
Okay.
I mean, so because that would discriminate against, you know, people that, the poorest person in the city ought to have the right to run for council. And if there's a fee associated with it, that could be viewed as an election tax or something, which
Yes.
you can't do. So you couldn't do that. I mean, it'd be something, it'd be our burden. We would notify people, it'd be on the application that by signing this, you're giving your consent for us to run a criminal background check. You don't really need a consent, but it makes it real clear they couldn't complain about it later, but it'd be at our dime.
Mr. Chapman?
So, in history, how many times has this happened in Keene, Texas? How many times we found somebody that had a felony and that we had to take action on in the council? Can anybody think of one?
Possibly one.
Okay, so how many years we had a council in Keene?
Since 1955 is when we get incorporated, but we had councils before that since, I believe, that date that's up there on the seal.
I think that speaks for itself, I really do. I think
So
that
it's
when
not a big
somebody,
issue, yeah.
when somebody checks that they have not had a felony, and they're gonna be just like what he said, and I know this from a lot of people that work for me, they will get scared. They just won't do it. They just won't go through it. And I believe that's the case. I don't think we need to go through this, and I don't think that we need to have all the people involved in our business, looking back history.
All right. Do you want me just to get a consensus, council, or do you
Well,
want to?
let me just ask a question.
Okay.
The ANA requires background checks, people who run for office, and anybody that applies to any city, board, commission, or committee. We haven't discussed that yet. Is it, you just want to limit it to people running for office? Or do you want to have that same requirement,
It should
anybody
be
that
everybody then.
wants to run for, or get appointed to P and Z, or the
Now we're
park
getting
board?
complicated again. It's getting.
Yeah, well, I just, because it's in the ANA ordinance, we haven't discussed it, so, but I didn't want to just automatically take that out and have somebody say, well, what about that? So,
It's true.
probably
We don't
need-
want people on our boards, do we, that have felonies? Because they'd be making decisions for our city.
Well, they don't necessarily make all the decisions for our city, because usually those decisions come to us at
They're
the end of it.
making recommendations.
So there's a recommendation, but we ultimately make those decisions once the dollar amount gets too high.
So it'd be okay for a felony person to make a recommendation.
Well, I mean.
And they're gonna have good judgment, but we
I'm
can't
not
have
saying
good
it's
judgment.
okay, but I would say, there's no state law that says, state law says city can appoint a planning and zoning commission, a board of adjustment. No state law says that those people, if they have a felony, can't do it. So, I mean, the difference is, we have a state law that says to run for office, you can't have a felony. So we're just basically adding an extra layer of protection to make sure that people that run for office comply with state law. If you put this requirement on boards and commissions, I'm not saying you can't do it, but you certainly are not furthering a articulated state policy, because state policy, I mean, the legislature has created all these boards that you can appoint to, and they've chosen to, in their wisdom, not put any requirements on the qualifications for those boards. We can do that, but I think the one category is a little different than the other category, because one of them, you're implementing a state policy, and the second one, you're creating your own city policy to put these background checks on people who want to apply for boards.
All right, let me just go around council and take a consensus then. As the item stands on conducting background checks, national background checks on new city employees and incoming elected officials, we would basically just be giving direction to the city manager to direct that new city employees are getting it, and then be directing him to create an ordinance that is going to then affect the elected officials when we make that direction. So let me go ahead and just poll the council. Foster, would you like to move forward with this? So Foster is a yes. All right, Mr. Smith, would you like to move forward?
I would like to move forward just newly elected council members.
Right, it won't be retroactive. Basically, once the ordinance goes into effect, it will apply to anybody who chooses to run for office after the date the ordinance is effective.
Right.
Which could include current council members if they run again.
Not chooses to run, the person who wins.
Right.
All right, Mr. Easley?
Yes.
Yes, you want to move forward. All right, we have 3 that want to move forward. All right, Mr. Gutwa, do you want to move forward with this?
Based on the advice from the city attorney, and I know this is going to make people get scared, even people have run red lights, because people don't want their past to start kind of haunting them again while serving in public office. So I'll just say it's not necessary at the moment. It's a good idea, but I don't think it's not necessary, so I'm not for it.
Okay, no for Mr. Gutwa. Mr. Chapman?
No.
No. And Mr. Shaw? No. All right, we have a 3-3 split. Can I break a tie on a consensus?
Yes, you do.
I'm going to break a tie to not move forward with conducting national background checks on new city employees and incoming elected officials.
Okay. Takes care of that one.
All right, agenda item number 7C, review, discuss, and consider updating or repealing the Code of Conduct Ordinance Number 2024-668. Okay. I asked for this agenda item to be on here because the new incoming council members have not been totally well-versed in the Code of Conduct that was passed by the previous council members. And I'm just going to do a brief talk. I'm not going to give a long PowerPoint presentation, Mr. Foster. My main issue with this code, council, is this was created to be the teeth to enforce the rules of order and procedure. If you violate the rules, you violate this code. Under the new charter revisions, if you violate the code 2 times, you can be removed from office. So here's the interesting part. The lawyer that we're going to hire, because Mr. Brown has told us that he doesn't want to move forward with being our full-time attorney, is going to be the one that investigates these violations when they come into the city. And he's going to make the recommendation to council as to whether the code has been violated. He is also our employee, and he can be swayed to make decisions based on a majority. They're gullible to the human element, just like any of us are, to having bias. So a majority of council that did not like one of the newly elected could decide to remove him or her from office. Nothing in the code says that either the council has to accept the attorney's recommendation, only that he is allowed to make one, which we will have to pay him for, and his time to do so. So ultimately, this does place the responsibility on this council to be in the position of judge and jury, removing one of its own from office based on that charter change and violations of this code. So just so that we know what's happened in the past to inform the council and the public, as it stands from my research, and I think I have it correct, the code has been, we've had 10 code violations currently filed against ourselves. So 10 violations have already been filed. Only one of those 10 has been put forth by the attorney as an actual violation. The other ones, he said, did not actually violate, in his opinion, the code. And it just goes back again to that attorney's opinion when he's reading them. So the one that was put forth as a violation of the code actually violated the code itself and didn't give the accused party due process. So this council violated the code by imposing that the code was violated. So my rough estimate of cost that this has enacted of taxpayer money is about $4,000. Every time a code violation comes in, when we looked at staff time and how much it costs for the attorney then to confer with staff and then write this up, the violation, respond to it. Some of the codes that he had to go back and review live stream of our meetings in order to do, so they were not easy to just read a violation and say, yeah, that violated, or no, that didn't. He actually had to spend a few hours doing some of this research to discern it and then look at other case law to decide if it got violated or not. So we have already wasted about $4,000 of taxpayer money, about $400 per violation. On average is what it's costing.
Yeah, I have a question, if I may.
Yes, sir, Mr. Easley.
How many of those 10 violations did you file on us?
I filed, I believe, 5 of them, of the 10. Yeah.
Thank you.
And where's this verbiage you're referring to where it says that 2 violations get you removed?
The 2 violations, I'm sorry,
Yes.
that I removed?
That get a council member removed? Where is that in the code of conduct?
I'm not sure I understand.
Oh.
What,
That's
Mayor,
what you said. You said
I
2 violations will get you removed.
Okay,
From
there's,
office.
I think this came up during the Charter Commission where there was a plan, or there was kind of, it was like the intent of that kind of verbiage that was put there. We were supposed to go back as a council and had how many times, if you violated, then
But where
the
is
charter takes effect.
Show me where it is in my charter, in my code of conduct.
No,
Where does it say
the new city charter that got just passed, we added that verbiage,
In here.
one or more.
Does it say it in here?
You know.
that if you
I don't have
violate the code,
charter
you
with
can be
me.
removed from
Twice.
office?
Twice, yes.
It should be in there. I don't have my copy with me. I forgot to bring it.
The
But
new one.
It was one of the revisions that you guys passed on the Charter Commission.
was 3.
Okay, I just want to read it. I just want to make sure that what you're telling us is
Yeah.
correct.
I meant to put it in my binder and I missed it. Okay, it's on section 3.06, number 7, page 6. Commits 2 or more willful violations of the city's adopted code of conduct, ordinance number 2024-668, as may be amended, excluding any violation of the city's adopted city rules of order and procedure as may amended.
Okay, thank you. I couldn't
Is that
find
what
it.
you're asking?
Yep.
So council, when I'm looking at this, I already know that we're going to have more of these. More people are going to come up with reasons to file code violations against us because maybe they didn't like us, maybe they didn't like me calling attention to the fact they might have been disrupting my meeting and they want to file a violation on me for that. And it's going to keep running up our bill, and it's going to be redundant, and it's not going to be fruitful. It's not going to be productive to us. It's not going to cause any change in the way we handle our business. It's just going to cost us time, money, stress, and drama.
I think we're past that, Mayor. I think we're really.
No, I think that we are on a better track right now. I actually
do.
feel like
That's what I'm
we are
saying. Yeah.
moving forward in the right direction.
That's why we need to just leave this alone.
So
and just
we
keep
need to
moving
get rid of
forward.
it. That's why we don't need this code.
But see,
This
the-
code
but
is
the
not going
code
to help
being
us
there-
moving forward.
The code being there is what's getting us in a better mood. It's what's making us more get along better.
With the previous council, you might agree with that, but yeah, I do not. I recommend that we just get rid of the code so that we don't keep having citizens, because one time we tried to amend this code, and we tried to say, right now, this code as it stands, anyone can file against us. It was intended to be
But they
for
have to-
officials, don't interrupt me, please. It was intended for elected officials to file against other elected officials. That was the original intent when the attorney presented this to us. But he didn't get the wording right, and he got it from the city of Allen, a town of 111,000 people that may be having some issues in their meetings, but we weren't. And what it did is it is causing us to, like I said, to have people file against us. Regular citizens are filing against us, not just ourselves. So anybody that wants to file against us can. And we could get our friends to do it. It can be used as a political play to create drama, to get our friends to do it so our hands are clean. And it's just like I said, it's not going to be productive. It's not good for the city. Mr. Chapman, did you want to say something?
I do. It felt to me like it was just something to be the judge, jury, and executioner with. That some people just decided they didn't want people here, and then they created something for that. That's not what we're doing here. We're not doing that at all. Okay?
Yeah, I will say that a lot of my cities have what I would call as a code of ethics. It takes state law. But all of those, I mean, every other city I have, they don't really have a process where the city council judges its own members. It's basically an ordinance, and it's a Class C misdemeanor, and if somebody feels strongly enough that an elected official has violated it, they file a complaint with the police department. The police department looks in it, and then it gets processed through municipal court. And if you get enough court convictions, then you can be removed, you know. But in other words, it's not the council judging its own members to determine how many, you know, you violated this, and you're off the council. It goes through the municipal court system because you've got an independent judge who then, if the judge makes, you know, says, okay, I'm finding this person violated this ordinance and violated the code of ethics or whatever, and then that's an actual conviction. The person can appeal it, you know, and it may go away, but there's a built-in process in the criminal law system that allows you to have the person accused to have protections, to have right of appeal. And if you were to remove a council member from the council because of those violations.
Sorry, Mr. Brown, I've got some people over here having a conversation on their own. I need you guys to give your attention to Mr. Brown, who's speaking, and not be
Well,
having
I'm just saying
conversations
that
amongst yourselves.
in my other cities, it's basically goes through the criminal process, so that if your council member is truly removed for violations of a code of conduct or an ethics code, it's gone through all the bells and whistles and the protections that the criminal court system gives you. You know, that's the due process or whatever. You know, the potential problem with this kind of a system is that you could have the majority of a council gang up on the minority of the council, file complaints against the minority of the council for something, find that, hey, you know, we find you're in violation, and if the city attorney agrees with you, then you know, it could be used as a way to remove people from office who are elected without going through all the due process that I think our Constitution requires. Now, having the city attorney as a buffer, you know, that's a good thing, but it also, I think, puts the city attorney in a kind of ethical bind. I mean, you know, quite frankly, I think one of the reasons Ray wanted to get rid of the other lawyer is he didn't think the lawyer treated him fairly in that process. That's why he said he wants me to be it, you know. But if I'm that lawyer, then I'll probably get, I mean, whoever your lawyer is
Gonna be in the hot seat.
find themselves in the crosshairs, because that person has to make the decision whether, you know, am I gonna find one of my bosses, because I report to all these bosses,
Exactly.
am I gonna find that one of my bosses violated it? So in my other cities where it becomes a big issue, they don't even use a city attorney. They hire an outside special counsel who's not beholden to this city, which is another layer of expense, of course. But, I mean, that's, I'm not advocating for or against removing these. I'm just saying that this is an unusual process that allows the city council basically to determine the fate of its fellow members versus having an outside agency like a municipal court judge, which has all the built-in safeguards that our criminal justice system has, that's
You don't find that in here, so.
Mr. Johnson, did you want to speak?
Well, I'm glad you brought what you said about picking you. I mean, we don't need people to favoritize people here. Council people was favoritism people. They wanted a lawyer because they were babying these council people, what their problem was. And again, we got one councilman up here right now, he talks crazy to people when they're out here. Nobody's saying nothing to him on council. And I'm not understanding why none of you guys up here saying nothing to this guy right here, Chuck E. for talking to people stupid. I'm not the one he's gonna talk stupid to, so you guys need to handle that guy and tell him how to do his job. And he should know better.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Mr. Chapman?
Councilman Easley, I do want to thank you very much for your kind of reaching out for cooperation. What I'd like to really see is action, not just saying that's what we'd like to do and let's just let this thing go now. I'd like to see action. I'd like to see real heart in it, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So thank you for your comment.
Mr. Brown, I'd like to apologize for talking over you. I was trying to figure out who the other 5 were. If Mrs. Parrish did 5, I didn't do any. Mr. Foster didn't file any. I don't believe Mr. Gutwa filed any. So these other 5 were filed either by ex-council members or who, the fireman. I remember the fireman did
Yeah.
one. So, and if are we counting the fireman as one, or is that multiple?
3. There were like 3,
I'm sorry, is the fireman one, or is that multiples?
there were multiple.
Okay,
Each.
so that's 3, and then Mr. Johnson filed one on me.
2 were filed against me.
There was some,
Okay.
like 2 private citizens.
Yeah, 2 private citizens filed against me.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, so it seems like the council that's up here hasn't filed any. So I'm in favor of just leaving this thing alone, and let's just move on with integrity and respect toward each other.
Mayor. Again, I deliberated this thing back and forth because, I want to make a good decision for not only the city, but the citizens, and you're thinking about future councils, future mayors, things of that nature, and a lot of times you want to put in a safeguard, in my opinion, to make sure that you have the necessary means to be able to take care of an unruly person. Because really, like even the charter, it says in there, and I looked it up, willing. Well, I'm not willing to break any of these rules, and I wouldn't, right? And I don't think any of us up here would. We're actually having decent conversation about this stuff. We're not arguing, we're not being contentious towards each other. We're discussing it like real adults, and that's what we've been elected to do. So I'd like to make a motion to actually table this for 6 months and bring it back at that point. And if we feel like we have exercised enough getting alongness together, I know that's a long word, but it sounds good to me, then maybe we can repeal it at that time. So that would be my motion.
All right, do we have a second?
I'll second that.
We have a motion on the floor to table updating or repealing the code of conduct by Smith and a second by Easley. Any further discussion on this motion?
Okay, may I have you're saying table this. We have seen, I did talk about it when we were trying to implement some of these changes, and we did see the impact. If you go back and review some of the comments, the meeting was a little bit lengthy because of the discussion and putting together all these kind of codes and rules. So the main issue is that if we table this, does that mean that now there's nobody who's going to file anything? They're going to be just nice?
I didn't say that.
So the cost is going to continue going up. Even if it is 1 or 2, still we have to send it to now
We have to send it to the attorney, it was still wrapped.
we have to follow the process. The city secretary is bound is bound. And there's something that's going on out there. This law does not, getting along doesn't mean that, you know, we passed this, we put them in place, now all of a sudden we became nice to each other. It's politics. There's always one way or the other you can be able to work with what is available and still accomplish, you know, things politically. So let's not say that because we have been getting along because of the code. The issue we are running into is the cost. Are we efficient? Does the process help our city secretary? Does the process help our city attorney? He should be reviewing things and, you know, keeping up with the state changes and all that stuff to make sure that we are not breaking any law and we might end up spending more money in courts. So, but now we are trying to deal with tattletelling. They say this and as kindergarten. I mean, we are grown-ups.
Exactly.
And even the former mayor advised against this. And I was surprised that we were able to pass this, Gary Hendrick. He was against all this, and I have seen the side effects, maybe what he was foreseeing, and we are dealing with it. And it creates just a divisive kind of nature because the public is trying to see if they have a point. If you don't like somebody, you're trying to see if there's a point. The city attorney is torn, he doesn't want to take sides, and it makes it just hard for everybody, the city secretary, the attorney, the city manager. You know, it's just, for a small city, it just creates unnecessary, you know, conflicts. So I think.
Well, I would just say that if you choose to table it for 6 months, that would not prohibit somebody from, before the end of the 6 months, putting it on the agenda and ask that it be reinstated. I mean, it sounds like what I'm hearing is, the question is, well, let's take a 6-month break and let's see if the thought is that this process is being abused, okay? I'm not saying it has, but if the thought is that it's being abused, let's just take a 6-month pause and see what happens. If during that 6 months nobody files any complaints, and then it's not a process that's costing us a lot of money, that's cumbersome. If it's still, people are filing complaints, then some council member can say, you know, in the future agenda, I want to put on the agenda the reinstatement of the
Reconsideration.
well, it's already on there, or you just say, you know, I want to put on there the consideration of either amending it or taking it off again. So anyway, the 6 months is not carved into stone. If you choose to table it for 6 months, parliamentary procedure allows council to still revisit that before the end of the 6 months.
Yeah, you pretty much said what I was gonna say.
Mr. Smith?
I'm gonna make one more comment. Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Shaw? Okay, I promise we'll get to you. So let me tell you the background why I wanted to ask for that motion, is because the city charter just got amended and there was nearly 800 people who voted for that amendment to be passed. So we're not even giving the people who voted for it a chance. We're killing it immediately, and that doesn't seem fair to the voters that just voted that charter amendment to be put in, and now we're just gonna throw this in the trash. So that's why I say, give it 6 months. Let's give the people what they asked for. And if it works out in 6 months where we don't have the offenses and we don't have the problems that previous councils have dealt with, then we can change it or update it or repeal it at that point.
If it works, leave it.
All right, Mr. Shaw, did you want to speak?
Sorry, Mr. Shaw.
Oh, you're fine, you're fine. As far as I can remember, we ain't never had nothing like this in the city council, even back from back 70s, 80s. And it seems like it's all of a sudden just changed over the last 3 or 4 years. I don't know if it's a target, I don't know if it's people pissed off at somebody else, or just people not getting along. I really don't know. But I know that for a fact, we have not had anything like this with the city, ever, until just the last 3 or 4 years. And I don't know if it's people mad at each other, wanting to get under somebody's skin or what, but we all need to grow the hell up. Excuse my French.
All right, we have a motion on the floor to table this versus trying to continue talking about it and updating or repealing it by Smith and second by Easley. So a motion on the floor to table updating or repealing the Code of Conduct ordinance number 2024-668 for 6 months. So let's get a vote to see who wants to table this. All in favor, raise your hand. Those opposed, raise your hand. I'm going to break the tie to not table this item.
Mayor, I would like to say one thing.
Okay?
For, against, or whatever, we need to put everything aside and work for the city
I agree.
and put your offenses aside or whatever it is. I've known Mr. Foster forever. I've known Chuck since he was a little kid. We may not agree on everything, but if they needed help, I'd go out and help them this afternoon, tomorrow, or whatever. You know, we're here for the city and not for our own personal gain.
Absolutely.
All right. Do I have a motion to repeal the Code of Conduct? Would anybody like to make that motion?
Yes,
Huh?
I would. I make a motion to repeal Code of Conduct ordinance number 2024. I'm sorry, what? I make a motion to.
Oh, I hit that.
Sorry, guys. I make a motion to repeal the current Code of Conduct ordinance number 2024-668.
All right, do we have a second?
Second.
All right, we have a motion on the floor to repeal the Code of Conduct ordinance number 2024-668 by Chapman and a second by Gutva. Any further discussion on this motion? All in favor,
Yeah,
raise your hand.
I'd like to say one more thing.
Go ahead.
Before you vote, just remember that people put in some time to put this in. It might have been the previous council, and they may not have gotten along all the time, but you got to think that they weren't doing it just for themselves. I feel like they were doing it for other councils to come. You just don't know who's going to be up here and who's going to be that rowdy, the rowdy runner, and then also the voters. The voters just voted for this, so I just hate to see this go away.
All right, all in favor of repealing the Code of Conduct, raise your hand. Those opposed? I'm going to break the tie in favor of the motion to repeal the Code of Conduct ordinance number 2024-668. The Code of Conduct is now repealed. Moving on to agenda item number 7D. Review, discuss, and consider updating or repealing the adopted City of Keene City Council Rules of Order and Procedure. All right. Council, I asked for this item to be on the agenda as well, so I'm going to present my thoughts about our rules of order and procedure that were adopted last year. My main issue with the rules of order and procedure, there are 19 pages of them. We are a small town of 6,300 people. Can you imagine as a teacher going over 19 pages of rules with my students every year? But that's what we're going to have to do because every year we have a new election with new council members. So we're going to have to go over these 19 pages every year to see if we want to make any changes to them, just like we are today. I put this on because these new council members have not seen these rules. I tried to tell last year's council that these rules were too much for our city. They came from a city of 111,000 people, and maybe they were needed there, but they're not needed here. But I was cut off by Councilman Foster from finishing my presentation. In them, they allow council to override the mayor 16 times. They reduce the communication between the mayor and the council, and they reduce the communication between the mayor and the city manager. They essentially tie the hands of the mayor behind her back from being able to maintain order in her own meetings. I can't ask people that are disruptive to leave unless council gives me their blessing. So if you haven't noticed, I've been slow to respond to simple civil rivalry that we've been having that takes place. I mean, if I have no enforcement ability, then why am I even going to engage? Why am I going to tell someone at the podium they reached their 3 minutes and they should sit down if I can't force them to do that because you all can just take that power away from me? If I can't tell a disruptive person that you're being noisy and disrupting me and I need you to step out of the room to finish your conversation, why do I need to get council's permission in order to do that? If they're disrupting me, this council should have enough respect to respect me to allow me to make them step out of the room. That's not asking too much. That's what happens in every city across this state. Every mayor has this ability, but I don't. And actually, this is not even in the city of Allen. Our rules are more restrictive than the city of Allen that had the 111,000 people, because they can remove people from their meetings and I can't. And to think how that's going to respond to this public. If somebody comes up here and they're being disruptive or combative, I'm going to defend my council. So if they're yelling at one of my council members, I'm going to have them stop, and I want to ask them to leave. But I can't do that with these rules, because these rules don't allow me to do that without asking you guys to give me that permission to do it. And what if you decide not to? What if I think somebody's being disruptive and the rest of the council says, oh, they're not disrupting me. I don't know why they're disrupting you. They're not bothering me. And then you undermine my authority and allow them to stay there and continue to make a mockery of our situation, of our council meetings, and to be able to do whatever they want. Nobody that comes before me is ever going to listen to me. If they know that you guys can just override me, then why is my voice going to carry any weight with anybody? I can't tell them anything unless I get y'all's consensus to do it. So the other thing that's in these rules is if they also restrict the public's ability to speak. And we know we don't want to restrict the public's ability to speak, but they require an overuse of these cards. And if you've noticed, you guys told me to lax this last year, and I did, and it's been great. But I'm not going to lax it any longer. I'm going to go back to following these rules the way they were written and ask for these stupid yellow cards and make you make motions every time somebody wants to speak without a yellow card, which drove some of you crazy that are on this council right now, because if I don't, then I would have violated some code or I'm going to get in trouble with this council. And so I have to follow the rules, because that's what people do. People follow the rules. Teachers follow rules. Mayors follow rules. I don't like all these yellow cards. I like to be able to just say, come up and speak. And if you all want to object, I'll let you just object. You can just object and raise your hand and say, I don't want them to speak. And I'll still take that into consideration. But I don't need the rule to tell me that I need to listen to my council. I already know that. They also require that all information requests be given to all council, which has been used to shame some members. So now when I send emails to Ms. Russell, she has to ask me, is this email for personal or is this for business? Because if it's for business, then everybody up here gets a copy of my email. And maybe I'm just asking her a question for my own personal research, and it doesn't need to go to everybody because it's a lot of work on her part to have to do that. And it can also be used as a political plan for people to shame me. And I have been shamed before, multiple times, for just asking questions. Mayor, why are you sending so many emails? Because that's how I get my questions answered. It also imposes 5-day rules on turning over these public information requests instead of 10. Every time Mr. Gutwa shot his video from up here on the podium, which some council members didn't like, an open records request was made, and he was given 5 days to turn that video over. The state law gives us 10, but we decided we'd become more restrictive and do 5 instead of 10. What if Mr. Gutwa leaves town the next day and goes on vacation? These rules don't take into consideration that we might not be here in 5 days, or have that might not be enough time, and then we would be violating our rules. It's not taking into consideration. We're volunteers, that we take trips, we have lives outside of this duty that we're doing here tonight. So I'm making another request, council, that we get rid of these adopted rules of order and procedure. Let's just go back to running a good meeting the way we had been before these came into effect. Let me run the meeting. Let me ask people to step out. Let me be the teacher that I am, because that's what I want to do. I want to run an orderly, respectful, fair, and transparent meeting. And I want to do it without 19 pages of rules. Yes, Mr. Easley?
To answer your question, because this is a council-run city, not a mayor-run city, how many times did you say "me" in that statement?
I don't know, Mr. Easley, and I don't
Because I
understand
was-
why you
well,
keep throwing that in my face.
because-
You keep
well-
telling me that it's a council-run city, but that doesn't mean that the mayor doesn't preside over the meeting and be able to control order in the meeting. That's my
But-
job.
But the council gets to make the decisions. The
And I have
council,
been making
these
the-
6 councilmen up here,
I
and I wish
allow
there was
the
another
council to make
woman up here.
decisions.
But I was informed during my divorce that I said the word "me" too much, and that made me a narcissist.
Well,
I
thank you
don't
for
know
that
about that.
accusation. Again,
I
that
know,
would be
I
a
know.
violation if we still had the rule, the code of
I didn't
conduct.
no, I didn't say anybody was. I just made a comment. But that was a wonderful tirade, so thank you.
All right, does anyone else want to speak about these 19 pages of rules of order and procedure?
When did these 19 pages take effect?
Huh?
Or when did they come into effect?
Say that again, I'm sorry.
When did they come into effect?
Do we have it in here, the date?
They were signed on February 29th.
This year?
It was,
So we haven't had them before now?
we had them February of 2024.
So we
Is when
haven't
I-
had them before now?
No.
My question is, would we have had the same ones if, no disrespect, but if Mayor Heinrich was here?
We already have an adopted set of rules from Robert's Rules of Order, and essentially they cover a lot of the stuff that's already in there about how to run a meeting, how to make a motion. We already have rules. We already know about conduct. We don't
Right.
need these rules as an additional addendum to tell us how to act.
Well, I know when I would speak at council back years ago, I didn't have to fill out no yellow card. I asked to be noticed. The mayor would tell you to come up and speak what you needed to, if it took 5 minutes, if it took 15 minutes. And that was,
No.
there was no fill out a card and send it in.
These rules have a lot of time restrictions on them too, that's really just impossible to keep up with, because they say how many minutes that they can talk, and then we've not been timing people, we haven't been having a clock up here. I just kind of let people talk until I feel like they've gotten out what they want to say, and I try not to watch the clock, because I can't. I
Right.
can't watch the clock, and I can't watch them at the same time, because I read lips. So I can't do both, and so it's been near impossible for me to try to track 3 minutes, 5 minutes. I wait till they speak. If I see council getting restless, then I kind of say, okay, I think they've been talking enough, and I'll shut them down, you know. But other than that, people need to vent. Sometimes they need to talk.
Well, I know some people that talk real slow. It takes them 15 minutes just to get hello out.
And we do have some senior citizens that have come, and they needed more time to get out what they wanted to say. And I have given some, used my discretion to give out some of that extra time.
Right.
And this council has been understanding of that.
Well, and
that
that's
I've-
great.
That I've had to do that for certain individuals that come before us. And that's what I want. I just want the rules to go away so that we can just do that. I can just use my discretion. If I feel like you guys want to oppose, I'll ask for you to say, okay, council, do you want me to still let this person continue talking? Or I'll say, council, if you don't have any objections, can this person talk? I have no issue with doing that.
Well, if
allowing
somebody gets
council
to
their-
talking too long, can we just not say, hey,
Exactly.
Mayor, we need to stop
And you
this?
can say that, that is correct. That falls under the Robert's Rules of Order. There, you can tell me that. And you can say, Mayor, I think they've been talking long enough, we need to move on, and you can make that suggestion to me. Yes, sir.
One option you would have, it would be if you wanted to simply suspend these rules and say, suspend them for 3 months or 6 months. Because my perception was the rules went into place during a time when you had a different council and there was perception that, for lack of a better word, things were broken, they needed to be fixed. Since I've been here, at least recently, the meetings have been very free-flowing, and, we violate these rules all the time. Right now, it says if you go into executive session, only the council can go into executive session. We're really supposed to make a motion to say, I want the city attorney in the executive session. I want the city manager in the executive session. I want but we just go back and do it, 'cause that's just what everybody does. So we're not following the rules, which is fine, because it gives us the ability, the rules give us the ability to waive that, but it is a formal process. You could just simply say, let's just suspend the rules for 3 months, 6 months, wherever it is, and then if during that time period, it looks like there's things that are happening for which we would need the rules to control it, then maybe we say, well, I think we need these rules, let's reinstate them. But if we go 3 months or 6 months and the meetings are running fine and everybody's getting a chance to speak and there doesn't seem to be anything that's, quote, broken, for lack of a better word, then maybe at that point, you might consider, repealing them. So that would be an intermediate step versus just saying, I'm gonna repeal them now, would be to say, let's just suspend them, and then see, after a certain point of time, revisit it and figure out, do we really need these rules? Or do we need a much more simplified version of the rules?
I would go with Mr. Brown's suggestion and suspend these for 90 days and just do away with them for the 90 days and see how it goes. And if somebody gets carried away or whatever, we'll talk about it. And if they don't, bring them back.
Mayor. So this actually happened tonight, so this is a good thing. Mr. Gutwa was speaking and a point of order was issued. And then he gave a description of what he thought was being violated at the moment because he looked it up and actually quoted, something from the rules and stated a factual thing that he didn't feel like was right. And that's part of what this is. That's part of what this document is. And it's like I was looking this up, I read this, I had to read it because I was asked to sign a piece of paper to say that I was going to follow this. And so I'm going to bring this one up just because it's fun and it's just conversation, but there's an area here, it's section 4.4 that says, a council member holding the floor may address a question to another council member, and the council member may, should they choose to respond, after they respond to the question, the floor is still that same council member. So if somebody speaks out of turn, meaning like I asked Mr. Gutwa a question, he responds to me, I still have the floor because I'm asking questions in order to get my point across. And then let's say Mr. Easley hops in, I can say point of order, 4.4 tells me that I still have the floor. So when you look at the rules and procedures, and I'm not saying that we can't update them. If there's some things that we can do to help give you more of the reins, let's say, because that's what you're asking for, then let's talk about those specific issues. But I feel like these rules of order really do give the council people a fair shake at being able to speak. It gives us a fair shake at letting the people speak. And if it doesn't give you a fair shake, then let's talk about those specific issues. But you're asking to repeal something that one, it did wonders for when he just said that tonight, and not just because of what he did, but it showed the reason why that worked, right? And then I just showed one and the reason why it would work. So I feel like there's things in here that maybe have been skipped over, have not been read yet. I mean, there's 3 council members that either have read it or have just glanced at it that don't know it, and maybe there's even 6 that haven't read it to completion, and maybe we should. But I feel like we should keep them for a specific amount of time, and if we're doing great, then let's just leave them in place. But if there's some unsatisfactory things that you would like to pick out, I would be much more entertaining of those ideas than to repeal the entire thing. Thank you.
All right, the point of order that you're discussing is also in Robert's Rules of Order. So we could simply just have a workshop on Robert's Rules of Order, and it tells us all those things that we already need without the rest of the rules that are in here. Some of the other rules that are added in this 19 pages don't have anything to do with Robert's Rules. They're just ways to control the way that things are moving in the meetings and to override the mayor. That's all the rest of this is. I did attempt to do what you're asking, Mr. Smith, and that's when Mr. Foster cut me off. I had a PowerPoint presentation that he didn't like, and he cut me off before I got finished in doing it. And I tried to point out all these areas to where even the city of Allen and the city of Ours were different. The previous city attorney had tweaked them to even make them more restrictive on us than they even were on the city of Allen with 111,000 people. They're just too much. They really are too much. And we can follow Robert's rules and point of order. All that still comes into play. That doesn't go away if we go away with these rules. That's all still here. We can still use those. All right, we have a motion right now on the floor to just suspend these rules of order for 90 days. I have not heard a second yet.
Second.
Is that Foster? You don't need to shout. I'm just kidding. Okay. Okay. All right, we have a motion right now to suspend the rules of order for 90 days. So that would mean that we would not fall under them, correct? Mr. Brown would not use them. I wouldn't have to follow them to a strict degree. I'll still maintain order like I always do, but we could do without them. Okay.
Yeah, I mean,
so-
obviously, there are certain things in these rules that are already mandated by state law.
Exactly.
You follow that. Robert's Rules of Order, I mean, can certainly be used as a guide for how to do a meeting. So there are certain things in it you would still follow, even though it's suspended, but there's other sources that would make you follow it versus this document.
Okay. All right, so we have a motion on the floor by Shaw to suspend the City of Keene City Council Rules of Order and Procedure, and a second by Foster. All in favor of suspending for 90 days, raise your hand, these rules. Okay. Those opposed, raise your hand. Okay. All right.
Breaking a lot of ties today, Mayor.
All right, I'm going to vote to decide here for a second. You know. All right, I'm going to vote against suspending the rules for 90 days. And I would like to see another motion, if possible, for a different time period. I think 90 days is not enough time.
Mayor, you want 120 days?
That would be better.
Okay, I'll motion for 120-day suspension.
All right, we have a motion on the floor to suspend the adopted City of Keene City Council Rules of Order and Procedure for 120 days by Shaw and a second by Chapman. All in favor, raise your hand. 120 days. We have 3, 4, and those opposed? I'm sorry, did I miss something? I'm sorry, that's what I'm asking, did I miss something? I saw these 3, was there another hand?
No.
Okay, so I have a motion to suspend them for 120 days. These 3 or 4 suspending. Okay, who's opposed? Okay, I'm going to vote in favor of the motion to suspend the adopted Keene City Council Rules of Order and Procedure for 120 days.
And once again, that doesn't prohibit a council member who believes that we need to reinstate it before that because of circumstances of asking that to be put on the agenda and to be reinstated. So the 120 days is unless somebody makes additional motion that's carried, will stay in place, but you're not locked into 120 days. If based on circumstances, somebody wants to make a motion to extend it, shorten it, or do away with it and put it right back into effect, they will have that option.
Okay. All right, moving on, agenda item number 7E, review, discuss, and consider changing the regular city council meeting schedule.
That's not what it says. That's not what it reads, Mayor.
Okay, council. Again, I asked for this item to be on the agenda. We have had some difficulties with our agenda
Excuse me,
setting
Mayor,
procedures.
excuse me. It says on F, council
Oh, I'm sorry, did I read the
agenda
wrong
setting
item? I jumped to
procedures.
one? Sorry.
7E says meeting schedule, so these two are conflicting.
Thank you, sorry. I forgot, I skipped E. Thank you for bringing that to my attention. We need to discuss changing the regular city council meeting first. I jumped to F.
Got you.
I'm sorry, I did. I jumped a gun, sorry. Okay, agenda item number 7E, review, discuss, and consider changing the regular city council meeting schedule.
Mayor, I think I asked for this one because I wanted
Yes,
to do a
you
little bit
did.
of research. We've had 2 council meetings since I can remember. I don't know if going to 1 would make it longer and 2 keeps it shorter. I'm for staying with 2.
I think that we could, if we did have one meeting, become more efficient with more items under consent, and as we kind of get a rhythm going with the new council, it is possible to run a city with one meeting. Mr. Brown already told us that most of the other cities usually do one meeting.
Right.
Yeah.
I know it would, to me, it would, if we had major disagreements could run into 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, which doesn't bother me. That's fine with me.
I haven't gone to 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. We've made it till midnight, but we haven't made it any longer than midnight as my longest meeting, but
Right. But I mean, all-nighters don't bother me. I'm used to all-nighters, but, you know, I want to do what's best for everybody else.
if we did one regular meeting, if business comes up in the meantime, we can still call a special meeting.
Well, sure.
And then just meet for that one little item or 2 little items that pop up.
Right.
So it's not like, the city charter only dictates that we need to have as many meetings as needed in order to conduct the city's business, and that's
Right.
all it says. And just setting it at one meeting where everybody knows it's always one meeting, and like I said, we can become efficient with that and learn how to streamline more issues where we have less discussions.
Well, I'm good with whatever y'all decide. I mean, it doesn't matter to me one way or the other. I just did some research, and it asked several people and did some background check, and since the 70s, we've had 2 meetings a month.
Okay, Mr. Johnson, did you want to speak?
Ray Johnson, 1009 Christine Street, Cleveland, Texas, 76013. I think when I was on council, we discussed this once before, about this one time a month. The question I have about it, how about our city employees when they got to stay till 1 o'clock in the morning? What they going to do, come in, miss the whole day tomorrow? I mean, that's what it used to be when Bernie was here. They stayed till 10 o'clock, they wouldn't even come in the next day. So we really need to think about our employees and just council one time a month, because if you figure once a month, 1 o'clock in the morning, I know we've been in there 5 hours one time. So figure it out. If you're back there 7 hours, you don't get out here to 1, 2 o'clock. You guys got to get home, in bed, and then be back here at 7:30 to get ready for work at 8. You guys really need to think about that one time a month. It'd be better for
Well, the
them.
reason I suggested this was because we're not trying to obviously impede on their time, but sometimes it's hard to prepare the agendas twice a month, because the way we have our agenda setting policy now is that we give it to her basically a day before she has to post the agenda, and then she only has maybe 4 business days after that before the meeting. And so it kind of makes it hard for staff to prepare for items that need a lot of research, because we have such a fast turnaround. We're having a meeting tonight, and then she's got next Friday to be posting the next agenda. So if we tell her tonight something to add, she's got less than a week to get all the research to do and get all the paperwork done and get through the attorney and consult with him on whatever she needs, get it written up, get it proofed, then get it to us by next weekend. And then a week after that, we're discussing it. And so we have found a lot of times that she's not able to get it to us, and I'm not throwing you under the bus, Holly. It has nothing to do with you. I'm sorry, I'm just using she as an example, but it's we can't always get the information by the time she needs to post the packet, and it's just because it's not readily available to her, and some people have to wait on it. She has to get it from other departments. She has to do her own research, and that takes time. And she has a busy schedule, and she has other meetings that aren't just ours. She's got A and B and and Z and the other meetings. So I'm trying to actually ease the burden on staff so that they have less time that they have to come here. I think we can get real efficient with our meetings, knowing that we're only going to have one. We'll learn then that we're not going to sit here and talk and deliberate on topics for hours on end, that we're going to be a little quicker about it. I think we can get there.
I want to see that happen. But anyway, to get to it, it's been like
And
this.
miracles can happen.
No, I'm with you on that, I agree. But I've been coming to council ever since John acted on it.
So this is actually less time staff has to show up for these meetings and stay late. So I think they'd probably rather take one long meeting and stay late than have to do 2 long meetings and stay late, because we could do it twice. Or twice
I don't know how
long.
you count about that. I'm glad I'm not up there and we discussing it, because
I
we're
will-
not staying.
That's why we're here discussing it.
I will say on my cities that have one meeting a month standing, typically the city manager will kind of figure out, okay, well, how much can I put on this agenda so that we're not going to go into the wee hours of the morning? And if there's too much, they either roll it over the next meeting, or if it's time sensitive, have another meeting. What I would suggest, if you decide to do this, and I've been in cities that had like 2 meetings a month, they basically say, okay, we're going to meet for example, the first Thursday of the month, but you tell the council, keep your third Thursday open. Don't book anything for it, because sometimes there's time-sensitive things, like plats have to be approved in a certain amount of time, or you've got an economic development deal that just can't wait or whatever. So most of the councils that have one meeting a month still have a kind of a standard second meeting, kind of blocked off if needed, so that the council members, aren't making plans there. They usually ask the council to keep that. So for here example, you might say, we're gonna meet the first Thursday. If we need the third Thursday, we'll put it in, but, encourage council to keep that night open if you do need it.
Keep it open for like a special
'Cause
meeting.
otherwise you're gonna have to be moving around trying to figure out, well, when are we gonna have this special meeting? Monday, Tuesday, Friday, or whatever.
Okay.
Well, that's a good idea. I mean, he makes a lot of sense. I think that'd be your best lawyer right there.
Mr. Seitz?
You want a good lawyer, you gotta pay for him.
I'd kind of like to speak to this just for a minute, because we are talking about my team. I've actually kind of been polling and talking, and actually there's quite a few in favor of once a month. And I will actually be going, the Johnson County one is coming up, and ironically, they've got about 5 items. So I'm actually going to be going to that to kind of just review how they move through the process. They do seem to have a lot longer consent agenda items, and so I am actually very curious to research how efficiently other organizations move through their meetings. So just kind of an FYI.
And we could decide to give it a shot, and if it doesn't work out, then we go back. We can always make a change and start this the first of the year. We don't have to start it now. We can still do the second one in December, because you already have stuff, I think, on the agenda. Yes, Mr. Foster?
Well, I was just saying, why don't we see if we can do a meeting in under 2 hours? Once we do that a handful of times, then go to once a month, rather than just hardcore go to once a month, and then we can wind up in here until dark 30. Just my thought. Let's
You
make
want
sure
to
we
put
can
a
do it.
time on it? What'd you say? You want to do
Yeah, let's do it for 6 months, see if we can do
it for 6 months, once a month? And
no,
get-
two times a month. If
Oh.
we get our times down where we are efficient, Mr. Seitz brings back some ideas, we can do things in a timely manner, then, or I don't care, we can do it in 3 months.
We've been doing it for 6 years, twice a month. You and I.
No, that's what I'm saying. We don't do it 2 hours. We generally takes 2 hours or longer for the meetings, as I recall. So why do a 4-hour meeting? That puts me here late, and I just would like to,
I'm thinking try it for 6 months and just see if it would work. That would get us to the budget season. Try it for 6 months, go to once a month, and see if it's causing us to have to call a bunch of special meetings because we're not, like you said, able to get business done if there's a certain time frame. And then if it doesn't work, we change it back, and we go back to twice a month.
Okay. Mayor, last time that the attorney spoke here, the attorney said that Joshua does one month meeting. Joshua, yeah. So we have some cities in Johnson County that are doing that. And in the past, I don't think we used to utilize the consent agenda option, which we already now have, and we can see how we knocked those 4, A, B, C up to D, and then we pulled out item E, and then talked about it, and then just passed it. So I think if we give it a try, and there's also an option, there's also an option for a special meeting. And we have made the special meeting so easy, unlike the past. Unlike the past, we have made the agenda meeting, special meeting easier. Okay. We have made the special meeting easier, where you can call for something that is emergency and you spend like maybe an hour or 2 hours, and then you move on to another, maybe meeting that might come in a few days after that special meeting. So I think with, change is hard. I mean, most people don't like change because it just throws you off a little bit, changes your schedule a little bit. But I think we can do it with the consent agenda, and also from the secretary. For a few years, I've seen how she has been trying to make the process efficient, from our previous city secretary, now our current city secretary. I think we can do it. We can give it a try. If it doesn't work, there's also an option for special meeting, and then we can tweak it as we move along. The main thing is, efficiency, where if you have questions about items, we want to see as many consent agenda items, as many as possible. That makes the process easier. If there are 2 or 3 in the consent, we can talk about it and move along. So that might shorten the meeting to 2 hours or 3 hours. And then if we have one regular meeting and it runs up to maybe 10, for example, it means that the staff will have to prepare, the directors and also the staff will have to prepare to only come once a month. That shortens their time and their schedule to keep up with their, regular chores. So I don't see any problem of trying it, give it a shot and say, let's try it. I know during budget season, we normally run into a lot of special meetings and long meetings because of the discussions. Okay, this is Mr. Smith.
Yeah, Mayor. So I'm going to go, again, got this Monday, and I'm looking at it, and I'm like, okay, let's go back and see what has happened. So then that way I can make a good decision for what we're asking here. So on the consent agendas, about 80% of the time, you guys, the council, has pulled an agenda item off of the consent. That takes longer, right? That makes the meeting longer. So when 80% of the time you guys have pulled one off, there goes the increase in time, because now you're going to talk about a specific agenda. Something else to keep in mind, and I've tried to do my homework on this. I've talked to Mr. Seitz. I've talked to Mr. Martin. And of course, I've been on the P&Z and I've been on the Type B board. What happens is the Type B is going to have something that is coming through their desk that then will have to be done on that Thursday to come to this council's desk to be done. And so, yes, we will know that ahead of time to call a special meeting, but if we already have those meetings in place, it almost guarantees it makes their job easier to know that there's already a council meeting set up. They don't have to call for a special one. Holly doesn't have to set up anything because it's already part of the program. And then the other thing is like Mr. Shaw said, we've been doing this for a long, long time. What are we telling the public by going down to one meeting for the people who do come here to listen and to be a part of what's going on in this city? And then now we're only going to give them one meeting a month, possibly 2, because we're talking about these special meetings. And I, for one, when you guys call special meetings, it's almost annoying, because usually it's on a different day. Despite what Mr. Brown may think, it may not fall on that same Thursday that we're all thinking. So I would almost just rather leave it on the 2 a month. And if we can narrow down the time and give Mr. Seitz the time to research, because he just mentioned that, he'd like to research this. So here we are talking about changing it, and he hasn't even researched it yet to see if it's a good possibility, a viable option for us. And that's coming from the guy who is in charge of this team to make sure that this thing runs efficiently.
All right, Mr. Smith, you did bring up a good point that I want to address, because one of the issues that I've been having since I've been on council over 6 years now is that when you do put something on a P&Z meeting that falls on a Monday, and you also have it on my council meeting on Thursday, then I don't get it until the very earliest, which might be Tuesday, because we have to find out what P&Z voted. We can't all attend those meetings. It rushes me, because then I don't have time to really study it. I have less than 2 days, and I work during the day. So that gives me Tuesday night, Wednesday night, and then Thursday night, I have to come to a meeting.
Point of
So
order.
I'm sorry, I'm still speaking.
Point of
And
order.
so that's actually one of the issues that I have with trying to throw something on our meeting
of
right
order.
after we throw it on their meeting, is council doesn't have enough time to review it.
Point of order.
And to make sure that they're making.
Point of order. A Monday P&Z meeting cannot be discussed on Thursday because you don't have the 72-hour notice.
Yes, it can. What it is, what he's talking about and
No,
what's
because she puts the agenda out on Friday for a Thursday meeting.
She'll have it already on the agenda for Thursday and the agenda for Monday, but we won't know how they're gonna vote on Monday until after Monday. She'll go ahead and throw it on the agenda for us to discuss something.
Seems
and we
unwise.
don't know whether they've tabled it, passed it, or not passed it. And we have to find that out late in the game of our week, right before we're getting ready to have a meeting. I don't like that policy. I like to
I
know
agree.
things in
I agree
advance.
wholeheartedly. That's why we need to stick to 2 meetings, so we can discuss that P and Z at the second Thursday meeting. I agree wholeheartedly.
Yeah, I don't like to be rushed, because that's how I have actually caught some mistakes, and I catch them really fast, but I have to sit there and really study.
Oh, I agree wholeheartedly, and if I may, you were talking earlier about these issues being rushed to get on the next agenda. That's why we have the 2 meetings, so we don't have to rush an item. We have that extra 2 weeks to get it on the next meeting, so we're not being rushed. We've done this over and over again I've been on it 2 years, or a year and a half. Something we talk about today is not always on the next Thursday meeting. Sometimes it's the second Thursday.
Sometimes it's the second
So
Thursday, but
we
a lot of
have,
times
that's
it's
why
been
we
the
have
first
the 2
Thursday.
meetings. That's why the 2 meetings a month is necessary to give the time for the staff to prepare the correct stuff, but still keep the flow of information and the flow of approval working. We need that flow of approval working more than we need anything else. We can adapt to when the information comes in. I just think we're rushing this. We're rushing. There's a lot of stuff in today's agenda that we have really rushed, really rushed.
Thank you very much. Mr. Smith?
So I want to go back to what you said because I want to make sure it was clear. I've seen this as long as I've been on P and Z and Type B, it is already on the agenda. So you just don't know the outcome.
Exactly.
But it is on the agenda, so there is time to prepare for either way based on now I know the outcome. So
Well-
I don't think what you said was quite fair.
It is, because a lot of questions come up at P and Z meetings. People come before the P and Z board and they speak and they have information and we don't get that information because I can't come to all the P and Z meetings and because we can't come as a quorum. So sometimes I can't watch the live stream. I'd have to watch the live stream of the P and Z meeting and then I'd have to know the outcome and see what people come and present. Sometimes they have question things. That's where we do the public hearings where people get to protest if we're getting ready to put a development in their neighborhood or something. They come before it. I want to know that longer than 24 hours before I have a meeting.
There's not an issue with a quorum when people come to a meeting. That's just not.
We have had that issue, and we have had to send
No, not at an open
people.
meeting. That
We
can't
have had to
happen.
send people out of meetings, because I had to leave a P and Z
No.
meeting, Mr. Smith. I had to leave a P and Z meeting because we had 3 councilmen
You
here, and I was the
volunteered
fourth.
yourself to leave.
No, I had to leave.
You did.
There was a quorum present.
Mr. Brown, can you
Well,
answer
I
that?
mean, you can have a quorum of council present at a P and Z meeting, they just can't interact. I mean, in other words, they can't get up there and, I mean, they can watch, and sometimes if we know that, I mean, Holly can do a notice of potential quorum or whatever, but, you know, there's no problem with I mean, same thing vice versa. When the council is picking up, sometimes P and Z members say, well, can we go to the council meeting because we made a recommendation, we're interested in what happens, can we have a quorum of P and Z at the council meeting? Says, sure, you can have them there because you're not acting as a P and Z, you're just individual members, but those P and Z members couldn't get together and huddle and start talking about it, and the council members couldn't do it. So what you're saying is a common misunderstanding that you couldn't do that, but, yeah, there's actually AG opinions, Attorney General opinions that say that you can have a quorum of a council at another body's meeting as long as that body, the council, as long as the quorum that's there, like the council at a P and Z meeting, that city council quorum is not interacting with each other to discuss any city business. And I always recommend, if you're gonna do it, that's fine, but spread out. I don't like when I'm at a P and Z meeting, I don't like to be able to look and see and count my entire council all sitting side by side by side. I say, the optics aren't good. So if you wanna do that, that's fine, but spread out, same thing. If the P and Z wanted to come to your meeting and see what's going on, don't all sit together, don't huddle together, spread out. It looks better.
Well, that's good to know that that's your
Thanks for
opinion, because
clearing
we've
that
had other attorneys tell us a different story, and they've told us we cannot be at a meeting in a quorum, whether we're spread out or not, because we're going to be making a decision on that decision that they're talking about at our next meeting.
Well, I mean, there are, it doesn't have to do with the quorum. There are certain bodies like Board of Adjustment, where you're acting kind of as a court, and, you know, the court process says, look, you shouldn't be gathering evidence of your own. You should only be hearing what comes before you. You know, we have our own Board of Adjustment. We have but some of the smaller cities, they act as a Board of Adjustment. And what they say there is that those Board of Adjustment, council members as Board of Adjustment members, shouldn't go to the hearing in which something is going to be appealed to them because they're gathering evidence outside it. But on just for planning and zoning stuff and plats and stuff, I mean, I can send you the Attorney General opinions that say that you're good to go on that.
Okay, well, I would like to see that.
Yeah.
Is that going to cost us money?
Just kidding. Councilman Smith, I want to thank you for your comment about our constituents and how do they feel about us making it once a month. I think that the constituents will just love it if they see us all working together, whether it's once a month, twice a month, 4 times a month. I think that we have to show them that we can not only do it, but we can do it on a timely basis. And we can do it in one evening, and we can do it in less than 3 hours, and we're together on it. That's what it's all about. It's about them. It's not about what our time schedules are. It's about just being efficient and showing people that we can do it. Thank you.
On that note, I'm gonna take Mr. Shaw's recommendation and ask that we make a motion to keep it at 2 for now and give Mr. Seitz enough time to deliberate, figure out what his team needs and how he feels we can move forward, and bring it up at a time where Mr. Seitz feels like he has enough information to do so.
I say we move it to the first meeting of February, keep it 2 meetings until February, the first meeting of February, and make a decision then.
So you wanted to table it as what you were wanting?
Table it till the first
No,
meeting
I
of
just
February.
made
Okay.
I motioned first. I
Yeah,
made a
I'm
motion.
Sorry.
I'm with you.
I just wanted to
If
clarify
you'll-
my motion.
If you'll let me speak, that's what I was getting ready to address with the
thank you.
council. So, Mr. Shaw, Mr. Smith has a motion right now on the floor, so we need a second on that one first, to keep the meetings at 2, to give Mr. Seitz time to research whether we want to change the meetings to once a month. So I need to find out if I have a second for that.
Okay, and he
To
did.
second that.
And I apologize, Mayor.
That's okay.
I apologize, Mr. Smith. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
And are we talking about until February then?
Okay, so the motion on the floor right now is to go ahead and just keep the schedule at 2 meetings a month, and I'm not sure what the time frame is.
What's the
and how long we
timeline?
want to give until,
I didn't give a timeline because Mr. Seitz may need more time than
to
we
give
think,
Mr.
so-
Seitz time to research more efficient ways to run a meeting
So it can take
before we
8
make a
months,
decision.
8 months, 6 months.
Yeah.
I mean,
so
it's an
How
open
long do
check.
you need, Mr. Seitz? Let's put a time to it.
Oh, you want to put a time?
Yeah, can you put a time to it?
3 months, 90 days?
Well, sure, let's shoot for February. I mean,
It's 2 months.
That's March.
It's 2 months.
Okay.
March is February. March is 3 months.
oh, let's do 3 months.
Well, we're only into the beginning.
First
of
meeting in
December,
March.
so that
First,
Then we
first
do
meeting in
we're
March.
December, January, into February, that would be
No,
3 months. or-
December, January. February is the 3rd month.
I know.
3 months would be March, the 1st of March.
Yeah, 90 days is going to be
If
on,
you're looking for a complete 3 months. Okay, so February,
3
March,
months is-
yeah.
When
I
did 3
think,
months not be 3 months?
I'm good with 90 days. I'm good with 3.
90 days.
That gives us time to meet mid-February and decide from there if we want to start in March.
Okay, well, you add 90 days to your motion then.
So I will add 90 days to my motion.
Okay, so a motion to essentially table this item
No?
would be the way we would,
Well,
I mean,
yeah,
we're review discussing to consider changing the regular meeting, so you're basically making a motion to
not
keep
change it.
the, yeah, to
Just like
table it
just
until,
table it.
until,
For,
we're basically tabling it for 90 days, and then we'll revisit it in 90 days, and then he's going to tell us if he has a more efficient way for us to run a meeting,
you want me to
essentially.
start that motion?
I'll second your 90 days. We'll just leave it
Okay.
at that.
That works.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor to table changing the regular city council meeting schedule for 90 days to give time for Mr. Seitz to research more efficient ways to run a meeting by Smith and a second by Shaw. All in favor, raise your hand. Okay, it's unanimous, motion is carried.
Thank you, council.
If I could just interject something here too. First of all, I want to apologize, Councilman Goudois. my blood sugar was crashing. That's why they were trying to get those cookies to me.
Oh,
I
I'm
was
sorry,
being
he was,
disruptive to you, and
I don't need to work
apologize.
him as a,
I apologize. But again, I think it's important for, the world I come from is all about efficiency. And I think it's okay to have a goal to get to once a month, because based on speaking with some of my directors, they would like to see that happen, you know? But again, we have to prove that we can do that first, which is why I kind of like the suggestion of let's get 2 efficient meetings a month, and then we can bring them together. I think right now, if we went to once a month, we would be setting ourselves up to fail.
Okay, agenda item number 7F. Review, discuss, and consider amending ordinance number 2023-656, City Council Agenda Setting Procedures. All right, Council, you should have had a couple of sheets that were given to you by Ms. Russell before this meeting. These are some recommended changes that I'm making to the requesting that council adopt to the agenda setting policy. And the reason that I'm doing that is because last year when we changed the agenda setting policy, I made the comment that by taking the mayor out of the equation of being able to set the agenda with the city manager would put the city manager in the hot seat. Because then he no longer is working with the mayor, he's working at the discretion of the majority of council. He might be putting things on there that are in conflict with the way that the city should be moving forward, and he really has no recourse for being able to tell council no. And as you know, the previous city manager told us pretty much he was trying not to play politics because this was causing him to play politics. And he said that if we wanted to talk about Fruit Loops, he would put Fruit Loops on the agenda. And that was his big joke that he told to all of us. If they want to talk about Fruit Loops, we'll put Fruit Loops on there. He wasn't thinking in terms of this is good for the city, bad for the city. He had nobody to confer with, nobody to talk to say, is this the right time to discuss this? So things were getting put on the agenda in kind of a haphazard format, which was not creating efficiency. And that's what we're also going for right now if we're trying to change our meetings to once a month, efficiency. So I would like to be put back on the regular meeting schedule to where I can work in conjunction with the city manager to set the agenda for the city again, because what I brought up is it puts the city manager in the hot seat. And what happened to our city manager after this got adopted? He's not longer with us. He did get put in the hot seat. You can laugh, but he got put in the hot seat and he's not here. He got tired of the playing politics, and he couldn't decide what to put on the meetings and what not to put on the meetings, and it was causing conflict. All I'm asking is for the change. I'm going to work with the city manager, and what it does is it puts the communication back as a team effort and working with the council and putting things on the agenda. And it also helps build communication between this council and me and him. And I think that's what the city needs. So one of the changes that I have under section 30.05, regular meetings, we changed it last year to say the city manager shall establish the council meeting based on our direction, and that's why he was just putting anything on there. But it should read, the mayor in conjunction with the city manager shall establish and set agenda items for regular city council meetings, and just end it. That's where it should go. And that way, Mr. Seitz and I, we will set up a regular time every week where we can get together, or every other week, whatever we need, and we can work on setting the agenda to make sure it's helping us build efficiency and that we're moving in the right direction under the vision that this council wants to do and wants to follow. And then section B, I have the change here, just adding in a few words that will actually help Ms. Russell, because she struggles with some of this that she's told me about, and I agree. We're giving her this stuff to put on the agenda so fast, she doesn't have time to prepare it, and she feels pressure to make sure she gets it on to please us. And it also puts her a little bit like that in the hot seat. So if we can just tweak that one a little bit to say an item at the request of any one council member, we can still leave it that the same, but add the words in as is reasonably practical when we put things on the agenda, so that way when Mr. Seitz and I are setting the agenda, if we look at an item and say, we're trying to choose a new city attorney, we can't really put that on next week's meeting because we don't have time to get bids and quotes and attorneys in here and set up interviews. Then we can come back to you as a council and whoever asked for that item and say, hey, is it okay if we put that on the next meeting or the meeting after that, because we need time to research. That's why we need to add those words in there under B, to make sure that we're not trying to put pressure that we have to do something if it's not ready, because it just makes us have to table items and talk about them more than once, which we've already done a lot of, and that doesn't build efficiency. And then the section under 3, special meetings, the same thing. Put me back on the special meetings where it say, shall be called by the mayor in conjunction with the city manager. And we also, I don't know why it was 4, I could have swore we had that as 2. We now do need to change that to the written request of 2 council members, because I believe that's what we just changed the charter to.
It
I
wasn't
thought we
changed.
had that,
It
The
wasn't,
chart-
it wasn't adopted yet.
Yeah.
But it
wasn't that a
changed.
change?
It wasn't adopted by the voters
Okay.
to change, so.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That one was not adopted? I thought that one
No,
was
it-
adopted.
It was adopted, but
Okay.
at the time of writing this,
Yeah,
it
we
wasn't adopted.
I know, and I thought for some reason that we did have these in conflict, but I guess we didn't. So I thought it was in
Yes.
conflict at the charter at that time. So we do need to change that to 2 city council members now to be in compliance with our own charter. And then under special meetings, B, 3B, again, add in the mayor in conjunction with the city manager, and that we conduct these meetings at such time that is reasonably practical, again, for at least a quorum of members to be present. Because the way it was kind of written, it could be that there might be a contentious item and that the council wanted to bring forward, and they could make sure that they did it when, say, I was on vacation, or Mr. Gutwood was on vacation, or Mr. Easley was on vacation. We don't want to do that. We want to make sure that we can all be there as reasonably possible. All of us should all be here, all 7, if we can. And if somebody can't, then we're going to have to make that adjustment and make that understanding that it might happen that a quorum of only 4 people passes something. But we don't want to do that intentionally, just to kind of create some gotcha moments for some other members to make some change. And so that's why I'm asking for that change on there. So if you'll review those for a minute, and then we can open up discussion. And this was the way it was written before we were changed it. A lot of this, I'm actually just changing it back to the way it used to be under the previous mayors. They all had that ability to confer with the city manager and set the agenda for the council. So what I would like from this council is communication from you guys more so that we can move forward, where you tell me what you want, I tell him, he gets with me, he tells me what staff needs, and then he and I sit down and say, okay, this is where we'll put this, and this is the order, and we work it out. And then if we need to make changes, I'll come back to you, or he can come back to you and say, we need to bump your item because it's not gonna be ready. He'll tell me something, the same thing, and we work together. It creates teamwork.
This doesn't recluse them from being able to
Yeah,
speak
that
with
was-
me, though, correct?
That was my-
Like, a
that was
city
my
council
concern.
member can still come talk to me. They don't.
Yeah, oh, yeah, oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's.
No, it's not taking any of that away.
So,
But what it's
so,
doing is it's getting you and me to confer together on what they're wanting, so I can share their vision and their needs, and you share what staff is, and that way I know what's going on again, because I've been in the dark for the past
So-
year.
would 305A read city manager, mayor, and council?
Establish the agenda. The mayor, in conjunction with the city manager, shall establish and set the agenda. It doesn't require the council at that point. The council comes in under the B part, where the council requests the items to go on that agenda that we're setting. It just kind of means we're calling the meeting. We're setting the order. We're talking with the attorney and getting questions answered, which most of that Mr. Seitz will be doing, I won't be doing. But it's just getting the questions answered for the items that you guys want. So you're still going to be able to ask for anything you want.
And we
then it's
still have
just-
a standing item in every council meeting for request to be on the agenda. If you know something at the meeting, you can request it there, and then, of course, the council will.
Yeah, we used to have it where 2 council had to request something. We changed that to 1 council to make it to where if we had a minority on this council, let's say 1 member that nobody else liked, if he couldn't get a second person to agree with something that he wanted to be discussed, he would never get his stuff brought before the board. And they're doing that in Godly, and Godly has done that to one of their board members. And they've actually got a minority there to where she can't get anything on the agenda that she wants because she can't get the other members to agree with her because they all don't like her
Yeah.
for whatever personal reason.
There's a court case that says that every elected member of any governmental body has the right to put something on the agenda.
Exactly.
So,
So we changed that to make that easier and better, so we're not,
Basically, Mayor, what we're saying is they pulled you out of it
They
last
did.
time,
they did.
and we're putting you back in it. And
Exactly.
it's you and Holly and Mr.
Yes.
Sykes.
And we actually did that this week, kind of informally, because Mr. Seitz has not done a lot of agendas. And so I have, over 6 years, and I've got a little bit of experience about wording and how things need to be worded on there and putting them in the right order. And so we actually, the three of us got together and we went over this agenda and we said, okay, this is the order and this is the wording and we've got it the way we want. I think Mr. Brown probably proofed it too, did you? You proofed the agenda on this one?
I'm not
Are
sure.
you proofing these? I know Mr. Chester
Ollie may have
was.
sent some stuff to me, yes.
I know Mr. Chester was proofing them, so it still goes to the attorney too, to make sure we're getting the wording right for legalese reasons and stuff. But yeah, it just allows me to talk to him, and it forces me to talk to him, and it forces him to talk to me. And that's been important.
That was the nice way of her saying, I don't know what I'm doing yet.
And then we all know what's going on, because people sometimes ask me questions, I'm like, I don't know, because nobody's told me, because they don't have to, if you guys can bypass me, and this agenda's allowed you to just bypass me and set the agenda, it went straight to them, they put it on the agenda, and I'm like, oh, that's what I'm talking about this week, I don't even know, and it's my own meeting, so this is just putting me back into a position where I can find out what's going on in advance enough state that I can prepare, and so that I can run a better meeting.
So Mr. Easley or Mr. Foster, anybody can still go to Mr. Sykes and say, hey, I want this on the agenda,
Exactly,
and that's it.
Correct. Yeah.
yeah.
Mayor, were you not allowed to put items on the agenda before
I
this?
can put items on the agenda.
Okay, so you were equal with the council?
I was equal with the
Okay.
council as far as putting items on the agenda,
Yeah.
but I wasn't able to confer with him on everybody else's items on the agenda, or even know what they were before they got posted by Holly. So several times.
Neither do
agendas-
we. We're in the dark
Well-
until they're posted by Holly.
Well, she's sending out draft agendas. You are still getting draft agendas and stuff that she sometimes gives out in advance, but yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
so-
that's the way it usually works, is you've got to have one person in charge. We all can't be in charge, because she can't confer with 7 people and send out an agenda and get 7 people to respond and say, do you approve this agenda before I post it? It's not going to happen. That's why you got to put 1 or 2 people in charge of, this is the one that, so we're going to give the go-ahead and say, okay, that's it, it's good, post it. And that's where Mr. Seitz and I make that determination to say, it's ready, we're done, and then it puts her out of the hot seat of then having to try to change it or make any, tell her, we're giving her permission to do what she needs to do and
So-
end it, so she can move on to other duties.
So basically, Mr. Sykes gets put in a corner, he can say, the mayor told me.
He said, what now?
If he gets put in the hot seat in the corner, he can
I
say, the mayor
know.
told me.
I'm trying not to put him in the hot seat. I'm trying to take him out and her out. And that's what this is doing. It's taking him out of the hot seat. It puts me back in the hot seat, but I'm used to it. All right. Yeah. All right, Ms. Russell?
If I may just make a suggestion or recommendation for Section 35B on the item request.
Okay.
Whether you put this in the policy or not, I prefer it in writing, just because I know with situations in the past, a council member has verbally requested an item that was daisy-chained then verbally to me, and it was put on the agenda incorrectly and caused a huge commotion. So if I have it in writing, at least, that's what I would prefer. Again, whether it's in this policy or
That's what,
not.
it's already in the policy. But yes, you were running into that problem.
Yes.
And she was trying to just, whatever we told her, and not follow this agenda.
Would
This
that,
policy.
would that include the final item on every meeting where we ask for items on the future agenda?
No, if it's on the agenda for the future items, I'm writing them as you say them.
Okay, so that would be
This-
verbal, but anything other than that,
Correct. That's during the week.
yes.
Yeah, it's better if she gets it in writing. And if you tell her something verbally, then she can just say that, say, hey, can you put that in writing and send it to me? That way she has something to follow, and that way she doesn't forget to, because verbally she's got to write notes and stuff. It's tedious, and yeah. So you can, in written form, request an item, and then if it decides that we need to not be able to do it, if you decide to withdraw it, you do the same thing. You have to write her and say, I want to withdraw my item.
With the exception of in the meeting, last item on our
Yeah,
agenda.
exactly.
Right, that's
Except
the
for
exception.
that's the exception. So at the meeting tonight, we can go ahead and verbally tell her what to put on there. It's on live stream, so she has a record of it.
Yes.
And that's how we're kind of creating the record, because it'll be
Other-
written in a minutes.
Number 3, special meetings, B, when it's called. You've suggested removing the no later than 96 hours prior to when calling the special meetings. This is just kind of a CYA, since we are required for the 72-hour notice by the Open Meetings Act. I would put some kind of verbiage that states we're not going to call a special meeting less than 72 hours.
Yeah, well, we would be consulting on that, and we wouldn't be doing that. We wouldn't be violating state law and calling a special meeting earlier than time allowed for you to prepare for it and to make sure we gave notice to the public. I'm aware of the 72-hour rule, so I took that out because it was talking about the council members choosing the date and time, and that's what I didn't like, because that makes them have to confer. That means they've got to talk and figure out, because they're not going to request the same item at the same date and the same time. And then it also, they might choose it at a time where some of us are not there and available. They might not know that Mr. Stites is going to be on vacation or somebody else is going to be gone. That's why they don't need to really set the date and time. They just need to tell us what they want to talk about. I talk to Mr. Stites and say, okay, this is what they want to talk about. We need to call a special meeting. When's a good time to place it? He'll send out an email, or you will, and say, okay, can everybody get together on this date at this time for this special meeting? And then you'll get the consensus and find out, will we have a quorum available? And then that's when we'll call the meeting.
Okay.
Yeah, we're just trying to do that, to make sure that we can all be here, because they won't be able to know if we'll even have a quorum that day. So for them to change the date and time doesn't seem reasonable, to expect them to know when we all might be available unless they talk to everybody. And then we're violating state law when we do that. We have a walking quorum.
Mayor?
Yes, Mr. Smith?
I just want to ask Mr. Brown, what do you think about the new change, the changes that are proposed? Do they meet the legal requirements based on your opinion?
Yeah, and it's consistent. I mean, most of my cities, typically, the agenda is put together by the manager, the mayor, and the city secretary. Just because any other group bigger than that is kind of cumbersome, although every council member has the ability to ask something to be put on the agenda, and then the staff can interact with the council members individually versus the council members getting together. In other words, you don't want 4 council members getting together and say, hey, I want to put this on the agenda. What do you think? Because then you have a potential Open Meetings Act violation. So everything that's in here, nothing looks out of order to me. I mean, like I said, most cities don't actually have policies on it. It's done that way. But if you want to have something that's in writing, then this writing is not a bad way to do it. So.
Mr. Goodwood, do you want to say something?
Well, yes, Mayor. Yeah, I agree with the attorney, because most cities have looked at their gender setting policies. They have the mayor and the city manager and also the secretary working together, because this also does solve the consent agendas kind of setting, how they are kind of pulled in. And also it does help with type A, type B, and planning and zoning agendas that are coming to the council, because the city manager is always aware of that. So then you might also solve that problem of rushing things through, like, oh, we have to beat this deadline, because something was supposed to be solved maybe 3 months ago, and it just fell between the cracks, and now we just have to do it because the timeline is kind of catching us with us. And then our council has to keep calling all these special meetings, and they don't know why they're calling those special meetings. So that will help with that kind of efficiency, so that everybody's on the same page, especially the mayor and the city manager and also the city secretary. Thank you.
And just to remind you all, I have taken the training, and I am actually a certified municipal clerk. So I have more training than Ms. Russell does. So I do understand how to set a meeting and how to write the agendas and stuff from the seminars that I've attended and the classes I've taken. So it's not like I'm doing this and not knowing what I'm talking about. So I'm trying to help us to be more efficient and communicate better. I think it's going to be good for our city moving forward.
I think we got moved way off the subject somehow or another. We're asking to move to put you back in with this,
Yeah.
with the city manager. And we got way off somewhere, but I'll just go ahead and move that we accept these changes and be done with it.
For what it's worth, I would prefer to be able to speak with the mayor, especially if we're going to become a city that works together and moves forward.
All right, so Shaw has given a motion on the floor to accept these changes as presented. Do I have a second?
Second, Mayor, but there was a recommendation from the city secretary, like to add in writing.
I think she said it was already in there.
No.
Or was it not?
Yeah, I think it says you have to withdraw your request in writing. I don't think it says you have to make your request in writing.
Okay, so we could just add in under B, provided the request is submitted in writing.
Yes.
No later than 6 days.
Right.
Okay, let's add that in.
Yes, it just makes it easier for the secretary to track.
Okay, because that part got taken out a little bit when I submitted that one thing. Okay.
So I did second it.
Okay,
with those
Shaw, are you
changes.
okay with making that change then? So that's, so you're going to accept that change as well. So yeah, we're going to say, provided the request is submitted in writing no later than 6 business days. Okay, so we have a motion on the floor to accept the changes as presented now by Shaw and a second by Gutwa. Any further discussion on the motion? All in favor, raise your hand. It's unanimous, motion is carried. Thank you, council. All right, agenda item number 8, we do not have an executive session, so we do not need to also do agenda item number 9. So now we are at agenda item number 10, request for future agenda items. So we already have a couple of them, it looks like, that are listed there. The new city attorney search, you said that was going to be ready for the 19th?
Yeah, right now, it's going to be the Kittle project, the real estate, and then also the lawyers. I plan to have all that ready for y'all.
Okay.
Thank you for your work.
Do we have any pending agenda things that previous council has brought up that we haven't addressed in a while? I'm just thinking out loud. I almost think there's one or two that we let slide a couple months ago. Is there, go ahead.
It was, the houses, the falling down houses,
It's on here,
yeah.
the nuisance houses.
That's the only thing I can think of that the council has discussed previously. We do have some things that were being discussed between the city attorney and department heads, but they have not been brought forth to council yet.
Did we ever take care of the issue with the temporary house, or the subleasing of housing? What was the?
The VBROs?
Yeah, VBROs. Did we
Short-term.
ever get into that one?
But the short-term rentals? or-
Yes.
I thought Mr. Brown kind of advised against us doing that moving forward. I think we kind of like said that we were going to let that one lay on the table.
Well,
So-
there'll probably be some more bills introduced this last legislative session. It depends on what you want to do. I mean, if you want to ban short-term rentals, then those are all in litigation, and you probably would want to see what happened. If you wanted to regulate short-term rentals, then there's lots of ways to do that. It just depends on how strict you want to be, and it definitely puts an additional layer of administrative, and you kind of, to a certain extent, you have to figure out how many short-term rentals do you have here? I mean, really, unless you go into Airbnb or some of the websites to see how much you have here. I mean, in some cities, it's just not an issue because it's just not the kind of a city that has a lot of attractions that, brings people. But it could be with the university, maybe you have, quite a few. So, I mean, I think the first step would be to figure out if you have many short-term rentals that are being advertised. And if you do, then decide, are there problems with it? I mean, a lot of cities have just kind of, in my opinion, kind of knee-jerked said, oh, short-term rentals, we have to ban them or regulate them. But they couldn't point to any problems that are causing them. And usually the other approach is that, well, if people are going to, well, we don't have a hotel occupancy tax here, do we? We don't have any hotels, but never mind that. If you have a hotel occupancy tax, a hot tax, then typically you want your short-term rentals to pay that too. But since we don't have anything like that here, it's probably not an issue. So, short-term rentals is a complex subject. I could spend a lot of time visiting on it. My recommendation is that before you wade into those waters, see if you actually have a problem. If you don't have a problem, if it ain't broke, as they say, then it's probably not worth putting, because it's very controversial. So if you pass short-term rental bans or restrictions, you'll attract attention, you may get litigation, and the question is it, you know, is there enough there to make it worthwhile doing it? So I would say probably if it's interest, you know, maybe one thing to just ask staff is just to investigate what kind of short-term rentals you actually have in the city.
We don't have occupancy taxes here in Keene. We don't have occupancy taxes here in Keene.
Now, I don't think we have hotel occupancy taxes. We don't have any hotels, do we?
Well, I was just curious because it usually varies, like, so Granbury doesn't have enough hotels to keep up with demand, so the city actually works with the Airbnb and VRBO communities, but the city, of course, loves those because it generates revenue for the city.
Yeah.
So that was going to be kind of my question. I thought we had it, so why would we get rid of it? But if we don't even have it.
I think.
Well, yeah, I mean, you have to have a hotel. I mean, it's, and then they call them hot taxes, hotel occupancy taxes, but even then, you can only spend it for certain things. You have to spend it for, you know, heads and beds is what they call it. Basically, you collect money from the hotel industry and use it to promote the city so that more people will come to the city and stay in those hotels. So, but unless you get a hotel, there's no legal basis to have a hotel occupancy tax because you don't have it. If you regulated short-term rentals, you could collect it from them, but the juice would not really be worth the squeeze on just trying to get it for short-term rentals if you didn't have a hotel.
Sounds like we need a hotel.
Yeah.
I'll second that.
All right, I do have something that I would like to add to the agenda. Since the city is going to terminate employees based on attendance, then I think that we need to be certain what that attendance actually is. So I would like a discussion and direction of staff to implement a time tracking system for city employees. And on that same line, I would like an executive session item to get an update on the security cameras at the park and city hall.
Mayor.
All right, Mr. Go ahead.
Yes, there's an item that we did cover, and then we did table it, about the Proposition 2 for property tax exemption for childcare facilities in Keene. I don't know if it's possible, if we can revisit it maybe in the next meeting. I just got I don't know if that's possible with your schedule. Because I've been getting some of the citizens that did watch the meeting online, they have been asking about it, and I was like, okay, we just table it because the new council was coming in. We might want to look into it, just the same timeline when we had the item that Councilman just brought up. So, and then the second one I'd like to ask is, I think Councilman Ray Johnson did ask for an item. I don't know if we discussed about it, about having a, like a tracking system for the city vehicles. If I'm not mistaken, I think, was it Councilman Johnson? There's an item that you brought up What was that about? About the tracking kind of system for the city vehicles.
Like a GPS?
Like low jack or something? You mean?
Yeah, like GPS or
I
something.
mean, that's.
The police is,
Car, if it gets stolen, you can figure out where it is.
well, our city should have already GPS on them, period, all of them. I mean, TxDOT, county, that's all come with them, GPS. It's like your phone, if you lose your phone, you know where it's at. Put it in there, same thing to car and trucks. All the police officers, I'm sure the fire department's got GPS on their new Tahoe, I'd hope.
Yes, I'm just saying, if, I don't know the current status, maybe you can be able to update all the council members.
So, I mean, typically our vehicles aren't going anywhere without a city employee, and city employees have city phones. So I'm sure there's some easy way to make this happen.
Well, they got this but, that's me. I'm on mowers and trailers and trucks now since it got stolen. Every one of them I bought, well, Brett helped me out with it. I bought them little stickers you put under there. And they go everywhere. I could look on my phone right now and tell you where my truck and mower is right now.
We shouldn't be discussing it, though.
Okay, yeah.
We are not I'm just saying if you can get the information so that.
Yeah, I would like to
we
know
can
that
be
too, what
educated.
vehicles have tracking devices on them so that we know where our city vehicles are at all times.
Yeah, I've put it on my list here.
Okay.
Okay.
Make a little list as we talk. And I don't know, as far as, I don't know if we want to keep it on the agenda, but as far as, am I allowed to talk about something that's been brought up, or just an update on the cameras and all that stuff, because that's something I was already working on, so.
Okay,
Shouldn't
that's
that be a-
fine.
Shouldn't that be allowed?
It just has to
In
be an
executive.
executive, it needs to be an executive session item, so we have to talk about it then.
Oh, an executive. Oh,
All right, anything else, council, that you would like on the future items on the agenda? Yes, Mr. Foster?
At one point, we spoke about redoing the Santa Fe Street because the infrastructure underneath it needs to be replaced. We could use water and sewer funds to replace that and then do the street on top. So I'd like to give staff direction to, in your spare time, look into that, Santa Fe Street.
Santa Fe.
Needs it badly.
All right, anything else, council?
We're gonna
All right.
need 3 meetings a month now with all these new items.
It is
All right,
3
it's
hours.
8:59 PM, meeting is adjourned.
3 hours.
Yeah, that was a draft. It still has half the name on it. That wasn't the actual one that we passed, it was just a draft one.